here. Wonderful. So this is the April meeting of Transportation Committee of CB4. Welcome, everyone. We're still on Zoom. We thought we were not going to be on Zoom, but we're on Zoom, and we thought we were going to be hybrid, but we're not hybrid. And one day we'll have a decision about all those things that we can rely upon. But we're on Zoom, so here we go. And you understand all that this is an executive order, and that's what we are doing. Peter is on the phone as well. Do we want to go around and introduce ourselves? David, you want to start? I'm going to call each of you one by one. Well, first of all, my co-chair, Dale Corvino. Dale, you are frozen. Ah, here you are.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, you're freezing.
Dale Corvino. Oh, no. All right. I'm going to try moving to a more live location.
Yes.
Anyway, if you can hear me, I'm the co-chair of transportation planning.
Right.
Hey, Dale.
David.
David Solnick, member.
Yeah. Blake.
Hi, Blake Kurisu, member.
Jesse.
Jesse Greenwald, member. Hello.
Brett.
Brett Ferver, public member of the Transportation Committee.
Okay. Alice.
Good evening. I'm Alice Walk. I am a member.
Yes. Tina.
There, Tina Nelson, member.
Okay. Janine. Oh, Janine didn't expect to be called.
No, I did not. Hi, everybody. I'm Janine Pretente. I'm the community associate with Community Board 4.
And Rob.
Hi, everyone. Rob Walker here, member.
Okay. We are very excited to have you here. And how do who do we start with? We are starting with, give me a second that I open my,
PDC
all right, and then
presentation on 9th Avenue.
Yeah, I had a piece of paper open, but now it's not open anymore. Okay, this is yeah, we have a presentation on 9th Avenue. So for the public, do we have people in the public, Janine?
Yes, we have 25.
Wow, exciting.
Yes.
David Warren, are you still a member? Yes, you're a member. What are you asking? So we are listening. We are first, the committee is going to ask questions. Then the committee, the public will ask questions. We'll turn it to the public. And then once the public is done, we'll regroup and have a little business session for each of the items on which we discuss the item and make a recommendation. That recommendation then goes to the board. The full board is on May, what, Janine?
The full board is May, let me double check, sorry.
May 4th. Right.
May 4th.
May 4th. And that meeting, the public has the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. So if they have concern, etc., you can still speak. And then we write that.
Wednesday, May 4th at 6:30.
Apparently, I forgot to introduce David Warren. David, I'm sorry about that.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back. I'm sorry. I thought I was taken off by some reason, so maybe I was perked.
No, because I said David, and it was David Solnick.
I figured, but no, it's great to see everyone. So are these all the new members, or the new members haven't been selected? I'm a little confused.
What? Everybody has been here before, David.
No, I mean the new, but they're new appointments. Are there going to be new appointments, or that's down in the future, or that already occurred?
I have no idea. We'll wait until people show up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so the first part is, and Colleen Chadigan is also here, as she's our liaison to DOT and does a wonderful job. So we are here to hear from DDC and the Department of Transportation on 9th Avenue. So take it away, Kimberly, or whoever is taking it away.
I can kick it off. If you guys could promote Casey Gorell from DOT, who's in the attendees, and then also Julie Shipper is here from DOT as well. So this is an update. We came, gosh, I don't remember which month it was. Everything is a bit blurred together at this point, but we came previously to kind of let you guys know that we were developing a proposal for 9th Avenue between 59th Street and 50th Street in response to a request that we received from you. DDC has been working in that area for a while, so they've wrapped up their underground work and are hoping to finish that roadway reconstruction and resurfacing this year. And so we've been coordinating with them on our proposal for markings to go in after their construction. So they're gonna kick it off with their update, and then we'll follow with our proposed street design. And just as an addition to sort of that proposal, we also have an update on, there's a piece of roadway that DOT is resurfacing, and so we're gonna update the intersection design. So just to kind of call out, there's one piece that's a proposal, that's something new, and then there's another piece that's more part of our sort of regular operations with resurfacing and just looking at the intersections as we do that. So I will pass it over to Jeff from DDC.
Sure. Kimberly, can you share the, there we go. Oh, Casey, thank you. You guys are coordinating. So thank you, everybody. Jeff Margolis, DDC, Department of Design and Construction, Intergovernmental and Community Affairs. I'm joined as a panelist, Wayne Brown, who's our Community Construction Liaison, who you may have heard from before. We also have a couple attendees. We can bring them into the panelists if necessary when the questions come. So thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. This is a long time coming, we recognize that. But as Kimberly mentioned, we are complete with all the underground work, the water main work primarily, and sewers. And once we're done presenting, we're going to, again, as Kimberly mentioned, we're going to turn it back over to DOT to talk about some additional work south of this project. So Casey, thank you. So as I mentioned, again, we recognize this is a long time coming. This is a brief overview of the project, which many of you are probably very familiar with. It's MED 609 on 9th Avenue between 51st and 59th. We've had a tremendous amount of water main work in this community for many years. This project actually started, I believe, back in 2012, and it's about $240 million of a city investment. There's connections to the third water tunnel, lots of underground work that many people didn't see, but again, it's a tremendous amount of money. It went also to CB7 just across 60th Street, which I know is one block north of you guys, over to West End, and it was actually helpful for the opening of PS 191 several years ago, adding some pedestrian safety enhancements over there as well. So we're here tonight to talk about the above ground work, and as I mentioned, and Kimberly mentioned, all the underground work is completed. The key here, and again, we recognize this is not necessarily the most popular topic, but in order to reconstruct the roadway, we actually need to remove the sidewalk sheds, the restaurants that are outdoors. So we've completed work from 54th to 55th and 56th to 59th where there was no outdoor restaurants. And what's remaining is 51st to 54th and 55th to 56th. We have given the restaurants verbal notice. Wayne has walked the block. He has also informed them over email that this was coming. This work was actually supposed to start last year, and we recognized that, it was COVID time. It's unfortunately still COVID time, but it was higher in the pandemic back then, and we didn't want to force the restaurants to remove their sidewalk sheds at that point in time. So we waited until this spring to start. We would like to start on May 18th, and we expect it to take approximately 6 months to finish. So we'll get into a little more detail as we continue. Just to note, as many projects in Manhattan especially, there is some remaining Con Ed work. We don't expect the Con Ed work to cause any delays to our schedule. We are coordinating very closely with them. A lot of the work will actually have to occur underneath the sidewalks. where some of the restaurants are currently located. And there will be some new hookups to the existing buildings as well. And then just a little more details. Again, this is a full roadway reconstruction. So again, this is not just DOT often comes through the neighborhoods and puts down a layer of new asphalt to make the roadway smoother. This is actually, we have to go down to the concrete road base underneath the asphalt, break that up, put down a new concrete road base, and then put the asphalt on top, as well as the pedestrian enhancements that DOT will talk about. That all takes time. And it unfortunately cannot happen on one block to the next block. We have to maintain 3 lanes of southbound traffic on this roadway. So we've tried to come up with a way to do work from expected to start on 51st up to 54th from west to east. So we would take 3 lanes starting from the westernmost curb into 3 lanes to the east. And then once that is done, we would restore that area and then start again on the east side. We have, as I mentioned, we let the restaurants know that this was coming. And we have marked May 1st as the date where we expect them to move out. We've also partnered with DOT and SBS to really make that message clear. And we are also very conscious, as it notes here, of the food festival on the 14th and 15th. We're trying to give people some time to really make sure that they understand how important this is and to move. And we didn't want to start and then have to restore the roadway again for the food festival. So we're trying to be as conscious as possible about that. There may be an opportunity, as it notes in the bottom here, for restaurants to set up on the sidewalk, again, on a case-by-case basis. We do have some curb work on the sidewalk that has to be done. So it will really have to be coordinated very closely with our team, but we'll do whatever we can to try and accommodate that. And that is the overview. We can obviously go into questions after DOT presents if you'd like, or we could, because I know that the pedestrian piece is a very important one here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Grell, and I'm a Senior Project Manager at DOT in the Pedestrian Unit, and I'm going to be presenting our proposal in response to the CB4 letter requesting pedestrian improvements as part of the roadway restoration for 9th Avenue. So a little background kind of 9th Avenue as a whole in regards to its place in the city street grid. The area we're looking at is from 59th Street to 34th Street. As Kim mentioned, that kind of includes the portion that was repaved where we are looking at doing intersection upgrades. 9th Avenue is a high volume pedestrian area with lots of bars and restaurants. It's a key bike route paired with 8th Avenue and is a big connection point between Moynihan Station and Hudson Yards. A little background on work that we've done in the past. In 2011, we installed the protected bike lane with mixing zones and pedestrian islands for the full corridor. In 2012, DDC began the water main replacement, which removed one travel lane during construction. In fall of 2021, DOT repaved 9th Avenue between 50th and 34th Street. In 2022, DDC plans to complete the roadway reconstruction following all of the water main work. And as all of this work was happening, CB4 requested that DDC and DOT formalize the removal of the one travel lane from construction and expand the east sidewalk, relocate the concrete pedestrian islands, and replace the mixing zones with offset crossings from 50th to 58th Street. So there's a lot of work been going on 9th Avenue over the years, and this is kind of like the final culmination. A little bit of safety data. 9th Avenue is a Vision Zero priority corridor. It's also within a Vision Zero priority area and has several Vision Zero priority intersections along the corridor. 9th Avenue does have a semi-high rate of severe injuries, but luckily no fatalities on the corridor in the past 5 years. So in regards to the design updates, we're going to be presenting it in kind of 2 sections. The first is the northern section from 50th to 59th Street, which includes the sidewalk widening and offset crossings as part of the DDC work, one block of which will be installed by DOT in-house. And then the second section is 48th Street to 34th Street, which is the intersection updates as part of the repaving. So the existing block condition pre-DDC construction were 2 15-foot sidewalks, 4 general travel lanes, 1 rush hour lane active in the AM and PM on the west side, parking protected bike lane with mixing zones, and 3-hour commercial metered parking during the day and 2-hour metered parking in the evening hours on both sides of the street. A big issue we've seen on 9th Avenue, even pre-open restaurants, is an insufficient amount of sidewalk space. The high number of restaurants creates very active sidewalks. And then also there's a high number of street trees and street furnishings, which create consistent pinch points along the corridor. So 9th Avenue has always kind of been on our radar of needing extra sidewalk space, even pre-open restaurants, which is even just adding to the livelihood of the street. In addition, there's a non-functional rush hour lane that was on the west side of the corridor pre-construction. The high number of restaurants and land uses here creates demand for curb access for both commercial loading and drop-off. The rush hour lane was typically obstructed due to this high curbside use. And then these obstructions that occur in the lane result in last-minute lane changes and weaving. And from our traffic analysis, the traffic volumes do not warrant this additional moving lane. So there could be some additional clarity there. So our proposed cross-section for the entire corridor is a 3-lane, 3 travel lanes for 9th Avenue, adding the painted sidewalk expansion on the east curb from 58th to 50th Street, expanding commercial loading zones throughout the corridor to improve curb access, mostly by removing the rush hour lane regulation on the west curb, and updating the mixing zones to offset crossings with new concrete pedestrian islands. This is somewhat similar to other treatments we've been doing throughout both your district and Midtown as a whole, where we're expanding sidewalks and temporary materials. One of the most recent ones was 8th Avenue, which we implemented in 2019 between 38th Street and 42nd Street by Port Authority Bus Terminal. So this is a rendering of the typical intersection with the expanded sidewalk. You'll note number 1, the big change is adding that painted sidewalk space on the east curb. The second big improvement is installing offset crossings with new pedestrian islands. So you can see in the before, it was a mixing zone with no pedestrian island on the northern crosswalk. With the offset crossing, we're able to install islands on both sides of the intersection, shortening crossings for both the north and south crosswalk. And then the final change is removing the rush hour regulation and adding commercial loading to improve curbside access. So this is a graphic showing the new islands and offset crossings for the entire corridor. The blue dots are the existing concrete islands that will be relocated as part of the roadway restoration. The orange dots are proposed concrete islands, and the green dot is the one proposed painted pedestrian island at 50th Street, which is outside of the DDC contract, which we'll be installing in-house using our in-house resources. We'll be updating all of the mixing zones on this section of the corridor to offset crossings and maintaining the split phase at 57th Street. So project benefits, the main project benefit is expanded pedestrian space. We're shortening pedestrian crossings, updating the intersection treatments for cyclists, and expanding commercial loading throughout the corridor. The second part of this project is tied to the repaving and the intersection updates from 48th Street to 34th Street. Here, similar to the other section of the corridor, we're upgrading all of the mixing zones to offset crossings while maintaining the split phase at 42nd Street due to the high volume left turn. These islands will be in paint and not in concrete due to limited concrete capacity for in-house resources. And that is it for the street design update.
Wow. This is just unbelievable. Fantastic, fantastic. Tons of questions, I'm sure. So let me keep the presentation open because I'm sure you're going to need that. So the first person is Brett Furfer. Questions, Brett.
Thank you so much. This is very exciting to see those widened sidewalk areas. So just a couple of questions. So first, our committee has long been on record as when we would have sidewalk cafe applications, one of our expectations, or maybe even demand, is that there's always an 8-foot wide pedestrian width that, straight all the way through. even when there's a outdoor dining space. And the cross section that you're showing did not actually show what the street would look like if you had those restaurant sheds on them. And part of my concern is when you were talking about putting temporary dining on the sidewalk while you're doing the repair, that temporary might actually become permanent, and then they're going to add their shed afterwards. So my question is, how are we going to ensure that when the restaurant sheds are put back into their correct place, which, you know, we're not against the restaurant sheds. We do like how they, at least I like how they add some life to the sidewalk. We want to make sure that the expanded pedestrian width doesn't become expanded restaurant width, which is what my concern is. So how do we ensure that there's going to be a box put around where those restaurant sheds go, that this sidewalk expansion really is for pedestrians?
Thanks, Brett. This is Kimberly from the Manhattan office at DOT. I just wanted to note we have Julie Shipron, who I might get her title wrong, but she's the director, our new director of open restaurants. And so just to clarify first, I think the intent is that the restaurants have already been told that they need to remove their setups from the roadway, but at least as I understand it, it's not from the sidewalk as well. So those will, I think, for the time being, be able to remain in place unless something comes up where we need to coordinate with them for maybe a shorter period of time to remove them. So I don't know that we're at this point suggesting that anyone would be able to set up on the sidewalk if they aren't already able to, following the current guidelines for open restaurants. And
if I may expand on the question or clarify the question. So yeah, somebody earlier on said they may have, they may use the sidewalk to set up as an interim. I think Jeffrey may have said that. And we are saying no, don't.
Right, so I was clarifying that I think that at this point, at least, we have not told them that they can, the only people who can set up on the sidewalk are people who meet the current guidelines, who are already able to do so.
Yes.
But we're saying that they may be able to keep those in place for at least a portion of the construction, whereas the roadway setups need to be removed.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but then I think the follow-up question in that same question was, once it's painted, how much portion of that is going to become the restaurant? And we have expressed indeed our opinion very loud and clear, because we are creating more sidewalk for people. How do we?
Sorry, this is Julie. The restaurants would only be able to set up in the permanent program which is to come. Restaurants would only be able to set up against the building. So this would not, the painted sidewalk would not be impacted at all.
Oh, okay. So the painted sidewalk would not be an acceptable space, an approved space to set up your restaurant. Is that what you're saying, Julie?
That's correct.
Okay, good. We're going to write. This is recorded. You know that.
And just to make sure. So then in that case, would it then become a sidewalk cafe and then fall under the sidewalk cafe rules and regulations, where they'd have to have an application come before the community board, so we can still ensure that.
No, then Brett, it will come under the new procedures that DOT is putting together, which hopefully is going to be working very much like a sidewalk cafe.
And that'd be like a 15-foot wide restaurant. So
well, we don't have those measurements yet. Yeah.
All right, but then I guess what we also want to make sure is that the 11-foot painted sidewalk that's being shown here doesn't become the only sidewalk, because now the regular sidewalk becomes restaurant space, because the 9th Avenue, given the sheer number of restaurants, that could just become a wall of restaurant sheds clear down.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Julie, we're going to need some guidelines about those sidewalk extension, and how do they count into the measurements which are designed by, which your unit is going to design. But okay, wait, so this is good news. I've never heard that before, and we asked that question many times, so that's good. Blake.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And, this probably is after the fact already, but, I live in the 50s and was sort of disappointed that we wouldn't be able to use the restaurant sheds during the summer. But, I probably would have been more sympathetic to the need to move them if the project hadn't been going on for years. And, with all of the construction equipment taking up space, it didn't seem like it was asking that much to push it back a few months. But in any case, I was wondering to that point, what the rationale was for not doing it block by block. I know there was an explanation given, but why would it be, for example, 50th to 51st, and then, sequentially 51st to 52nd? And then my second question was just about the painted sidewalk and the rationale for doing the painted sidewalk versus just extending the actual sidewalk, with the concern that it might become part of the bike lane. Thank you.
So I can take the first one. So yeah, obviously, we recognize that the summer is an ideal time to be outdoors. So this was not, not something we took lightly. We do need to, again, we expect it to take 6 months. So we need to start in the spring in order to finish by the fall because we need to maintain, the temperatures need to be a certain number of degrees before the work has to stop. So it's approximately 45 for a consistent number of days for this kind of work to happen. If we weren't able to finish, for example, there was a request previously to start in July, then it leads us into, let's say, December, and then we're keeping the staff and the contractor until the next spring. So it's unfortunately just a matter of timing. And as I mentioned, this is not just a repaving. Again, DOT has put together a really extensive pedestrian safety package here, which sounds like mostly the community board is in favor of. So this all takes time. And as I mentioned before, it's the concrete road base that we have to go down to while maintaining the 3 lanes of southbound traffic. In terms of the block by block, obviously we thought about that. We anticipated that question. Casey, I don't know if you can go to that appendix slide. So this is what it would look like if we went block by block, for example. And it would just create a bottleneck as cars continue south after the lane that's the block that's open. And we just didn't think that was safe for both pedestrians and traffic. So that is unfortunately why we can't do the block by block.
Okay, thank you. Tina.
Could we get the question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, DOT, I don't know if they wanted to answer that additional question.
Could you repeat the painted question? I know it was about why not building it out.
Why not just actually extending the sidewalk instead of, the painted sidewalk?
Because of the money.
Well, it's kind of multiple things. So this project it's technically a DP project constructed through DDC. It's a very old project tied to a lot of the water work going on in the city. So it wasn't proposed at that time. And then, so on top of it being old, this is kind of like the last push for the project. So adding some scope like that into this project would have been a very big lift, both for DDC and DOT from a funding standpoint and from just a management standpoint. So there's DEP regulations about water mains under concrete. So there would have to been probably some adjustment to some of the water mains to allow for the new sidewalk and the new curbs. It also would have drastically changed the drainage of the entire street. So adding a 10-foot sidewalk on one side, you would have had to reconstruct the entire sidewalk up to the restaurant. So it would have been even more invasive for restaurants and businesses. So a project of that type is quite large, and it would need a very comprehensive planning process to be able to implement that. So, and that wasn't something we were able to do in just these couple months when we had this opportunity as part of the roadway restoration.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tina now.
Hi there. First, thank you so much for this presentation. I have to say, for someone who walks these blocks all the time, I'm very, very appreciative of wider sidewalk space, which is really needed. But I have a few questions. The first question has to do with the bus and the parking lane. I don't see it anymore there on the diagram that you're showing right now. But was there any thought of just a bus lane, or has it always been the thought that it had to be a bus and parking lane? That's my first question.
We did investigate doing a bus lane, and we do have the width to do that in the future. We reached out to our transit development group. They didn't think a bus lane was a super high priority here, as the bus travels at a relatively quick pace currently. There are bus stops that are clear of parking, so the bus will still be able to pull to the curb. But as part of this project, we prioritize curbside access and loading due to the land use versus a bus lane.
I see. Okay, but you're saying that that could be a possibility in the future, I guess.
Yeah, a bus lane is just markings changes, so it could happen at any time in the future.
Another question that I have has to do with the fact that this has been going on for a while, and a few people have asked me about a container that takes up a block between 59th and 60th Street. And it's been there for quite some time. And frankly, I don't think there's a bike lane there, which concerns me because there's lots of traffic and this huge container. I'm curious who I or someone can contact about whether the container should be there still, if it's needed to be there, because no one has been working there, at least on information and belief. So if you can just give me some advice as to who to call or who to tap regarding that huge container that blocks bicycles to a bike lane.
Hi, it's Colleen in the Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office. We can find out who the container belongs to, and we will notify them of the issue, okay?
Colleen,
Okay.
I believe it belongs to the DDC contractor.
Oh,
So
belongs to the DDC. Okay, well, there's the culprit.
yeah,
Okay.
I think, so Wayan is on right now, and maybe Wayan can follow up with you specifically, but it is part of the project. It is a storage area for the contractor, but we can try and get you some more details and the time.
But shouldn't they move it out to the parking lane instead of being in the bike lane? Which I think is the point being made here.
Understood. I think there is a bike lane there. I've walked the area.
but the container is on the bike lane.
I see what you're saying.
Okay, yes, the container is definitely on the bike lane, but we have created a bike lane just to the west of it that's constantly maintained with Jersey barriers and barrels and signage that lets them know that it's there well before even reaching that area. So we've been able to maintain that. As far as the container is, that's the equipment and supply container for this project. We couldn't put it on the new restored area because DOT has to do final inspection, and that was already done. Plus, we access it, if not daily, every couple of days for materials for the excuse me, for the ancillary work we do on the side streets. So that will be removed because we have work that has to be restored exactly underneath where they are right now. So that will be removed in the very near future to maintain that area and correct the curb to curb.
Okay. Great.
Okay, but
now you have anything else?
It's Colleen again. Wayne, just to make sure, you are maintaining the bike lane with the protective barriers and signage, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Tina, are you done or not?
Yeah, I believe I had one more question that somebody had asked me.
Well, we can come back.
Just in terms of when there was construction in the past, the lines for the road, the temporary lines were faded and hard to see. So there's a request that, and this is particularly between 56th and 60th Street. I just ask on behalf of the community that when this construction is done or any temporary construction, that the lines be clear because of the weaving in and out of cars. It was hard for cars to see, I guess, the lines. So that's what I wanted to pass on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dale.
Can you just, Tina, where is that container again? What's the cross street, just for my notes?
The container actually is from 59th to 60th Street. It takes up a whole block on the east side of the block.
Okay, thanks. And my question about this work area is, and probably it's for Wayne since he's on the ground. Like, do you have a count of how many of the roadway streeteries there are, or like linear feet? I don't know if there's like a quantity or a count. Is it like, it seems like this is a pretty heavily populated stretch of 9th Avenue with the outdoor sheds. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's about 24, we believe, right over in this area.
24 is your count?
24 that would be affected, yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks.
I need to amend that because we do have work on the side streets. So that's going to go up to a total of 36.
So 24 on 9th and then adding the ones on the
Yeah,
sides.
but that's like a different project on the side. It's a
No.
water project. It's not the work project, right?
No, it's part of our project. We had to do
Oh, okay, sorry.
tie-ins to the new mains. Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to get a ballpark count. You've given me a very precise count of like how many are impacted. So thank you very much
Right.
to both of you.
David Solnick.
Yes, I was just wondering, given that along that long stretch, there's going to be the islands are just going to be painted. Is there anything preventing planters, above ground planters from being added to those islands?
I can take that one. So in the section from 59th to 50th, almost all of them are going to be concrete. But as part
I
of
was
the
referring to the other section.
Okay, so for the repaving, yeah, we are proposing 5 painted islands. There's nothing geometrically preventing above ground planters. The only thing we require for planters is a maintenance partner because we don't have the kind of resources or crews to plant them. So we could discuss that possibly.
But that's the same with the in-ground planters, right? It's the same. It's the same scenario, just above ground versus below ground. So I'm not sure that that's a difference.
Just to add to that, well, we do need planters we do need maintenance partner for any planter that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But also at certain intersections, especially in offset crossings, we have to maintain visibility. So it's not always an option in every location.
So is that something you'll look at adding where it's possible?
If there's interest from a maintenance partner, we can certainly discuss it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So staying on that, are you good, David?
Yes.
Can I go ahead? Okay. Staying on that subject, I see 38th Street here with no proposed painted island. But there was a painted island before we repaved, right? Casey?
38th Street. I'll have to look. That could just be an error on the graphic. I'll have to check that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea at 38th Street, which is my street, to remove that.
Well, no, I think it's listed as an existing painted island. So
yeah, it's existing, but it's a painted island. Right?
It will remain as an existing painted island, not
painted
a
island. Okay.
Yeah.
And
not removing it.
Right. So I had a few questions. So in the first presentation that Jeffrey did, you said that you were going to put the markings in November, right? Way at the beginning.
Correct. We expect to finish up by November
so
completely.
Last year we had exactly that situation, and that's why in the rest of the avenue nothing is done, because in November, first of all, everybody got delayed, and then we couldn't get the markings. And then we had a blacktop for recently. I mean, it has been 6 months now.
So, I mean, again, the goal is to finish up everything by November. So it's possible that those markings would go in sooner. I mean, again, we're not going to I certainly don't think we're going to turn over this roadway to DOT with these additional streets being reconstructed without.
I'm just saying, this is,
No,
we
I
just went through
understand.
that. We just went
I
through that,
understand.
and the whole avenue is like that because of the delay in the weather. And so we spend the whole winter without zero marking, therefore zero bike lanes. So I just want to make that very, very aware of that. I didn't see whether we were going to have, Casey, bike lane protection the same way we have on 8th Avenue.
Let me go to the plan.
This is parking protected.
Yeah,
This is, yeah, this will be almost entirely parking protected. So there's not really a need like on 8th Avenue. Let me go to 8th Avenue actually. So this section of 8th Avenue was not parking protected. So that's why we used the vertical separation, but this will remain a parking protected path. So there's no.
There is very, very little parking up there.
Well, so actually one plus also of the offset crossings is they actually increase the amount of loading and parking space because there's not as much room dedicated towards the mixing zone. So you can see here, like this whole space is clear. So this is where trucks would essentially in the existing condition park to unload because that's the only available curb space. Where under the proposal, there's actually more consistent parking along the entire corridor.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is that there is very little parking, and so that makes this bike lane a non-protected bike lane. So I would definitely ask that you add some protection there. It doesn't.
So you're saying that people don't use the parking?
No, they don't use, yeah, exactly. People don't use the parking up there on the upper side. On most of 9th Avenue, a lot of people don't use the parking. There's a lot of deliveries in the morning, right? And then in the evening, there is not a real use of parking. Maybe we can dedicate that to the NYPD. I mean, we could dedicate that to NYPD and tell them then we will have protection, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to raise that point, Christine, because Midtown South parks its vehicles
everywhere
in the turn lane between at 34th Street and in a travel lane between 34th and 35th Street and in the bus stop on the corner of 35th Street. So perhaps some of this should be dedicated, and not that I, endorse but if their vehicles are going to do good by effectively protecting the bike lane, then maybe there should be some.
Yeah, they may not want to be that far, but otherwise my request would be, and then the truffle, I mean, the wherever you have a painted truffle place, is that going to have some protection, some vertical bollard?
Yeah, so in between the paint and the bike lane, it'll be similar to 8th Avenue where we have some, there'll be a little more closely spaced here because we don't have planters, but there will be vertical posts.
So anyway, I want to raise that to you, and it just doesn't feel totally. On 57th Street, you say you're going to keep the red, the split phase, right?
Correct, yeah.
That's a split phase going on 9th Avenue. There is no split phase going from 57 onto 9, right?
Correct. It's for the southbound left from.
We would like to request one of those. This is a pretty dangerous intersection, and 57 is a very bad street, and so that would be a good thing to do. And then, so tell us about trees. Where are the trees? Not this section, the section above.
So we did look at where trees would be feasible, and unfortunately with the new water mains, due to like DEP and DPR planting guidelines, the water mains are actually under most of the pedestrian islands, so we're not able to add street trees.
How could it be? Because last time, the pedestrian islands were in a totally different place, and we heard the same answer.
Well, they're close to it. So DEP requires quite substantial offsets from big water mains, and these are, with the new water mains, very big and require very big offsets. It's just an unfortunate requirement from DEP.
All right, so we're going to go fight that.
Please do.
We are. Eric Butcher is setting up a meeting with them. So we will be back to you. Can we go to the public, Janine?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring over Jazz, Katarzyna, and Brian for now.
Janine, can you put in Charles Bunyarovich from the project team as well, the DDC project team?
Charles, yes.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just trying to understand a little bit. I'm actually one of the owners of a business on between 54th and 53rd Street.
Okay.
And on the west side, I'm a little bit unclear because from what I'm basically hearing is the sheds have to be removed on basically all the way along on the west side. And we basically will not be able to replace them because effectively what you're saying here is that on the west side, you've got the 15-foot
No, hold that thought. Can you show the west side and can you show what, your construction schedule, how you're going to do it, first of all? Because you are reconstructing the street, right? We're talking about DDC here.
Right, we're starting from the west side moving east. So we're taking the first 3 lanes on the west side. And then
okay.
So basically, if I understand it correctly, then there will never be the possibility of replacing those sheds, even after.
No, that's not true. I don't think you have it right. So then when it's done, can you show from above the picture you were showing from above where you were showing where the lane was going to be? Where's your parking lane?
Oh yeah, this is the parking lane here on the west curb.
Right.
So it would be following the standard roadway guidelines.
So you would have, Jazz, you can then reinstall, provided you are not in the bus stop, on your western lane.
Yes, but I mean, what I'm saying is, if you're not in the bus stop, you have a commercial lane, and that basically means that during actual operating hours for the restaurant, you're almost in effect basically saying that we can't put a shed up there because effectively you have to make the space available for commercial traffic.
No, they are not saying that. This is a commercial parking. And in commercial parking, if you apply, this is a place where you can apply for a shed.
Okay, all right. So basically on the west side, we can apply for a shed as such to be put up there.
Probably. I mean, we'll need to see the new rules, but that's my understanding.
The other point I want to make, just to basically highlight, is in essence, we're a new business. We were not aware of these construction mandates that were basically being put into place. So we basically constructed a whole set of, I mean, we haven't constructed a formal shed because of the new potential guidelines coming out of the New York City. But nevertheless, it basically means that we're in essence writing off the whole of this year in terms of development. And actually, our proposal was based on the fact that 50% of our capacity would be driven by having people out on the sidewalk. We're not going to be able to achieve that. And that.
So you need to go see your landlord and discuss that with them.
No, we'll have to discuss it with them. But I mean, I'm just pointing out the fact that this is completely new information to us after we already signed all the agreements and so on and the leases and so on.
But that's the way it is in New York City. I mean, when people start to do transportation projects, that takes the primacy over everything.
The other point I want to make is we were told that this would take approximately 2 months. Now, on this presentation, it's saying that it basically is going to carry on until November, which in essence basically writes off all of 2022, because realistically, it'll be spring of 2023 before we can actually start thinking about putting people back out onto the street as such.
Exactly.
So we've got a bit of inconsistency between people's information that's been provided to us, which said it's going to be 2 months versus 6 months.
I'm sorry if there was any miscommunication. It was never our intention. This has always been planned for an extensive number of months. It's as I've said, this is not just a repaving we're adding significant pedestrian enhancements here as well as reconstructing the entire roadway. So
yeah, Jeffrey, it may have been that the community board had the impression that it was a DOT repaving and not a reconstruction. I don't think we were aware as well that it was a reconstruction.
I see. Yeah, I mean the other thing which I didn't really mention is we as I did mention, we significantly upgraded the water mains, so we want to make sure those are protected as well. So that's another factor here why we have to do the full street reconstruction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, Giles, thank you so much. Who's next?
Katarzyna was next.
Who?
Katarzyna. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Did you bring somebody over? I don't see anybody.
Hello.
Oh, there she is.
Katarina, is that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't think my video is working, but maybe you can hear me.
We can hear you.
With all due respect to the DOT and all the administrators here, there hasn't been a miscommunication. It was lack of communication with the businesses. Even last year, when we were rebuilding and also ours isn't a shed, is a beautiful patio on which we spent a lot of money, thousands of dollars. Had it been communicated to me that there would be a 6 months construction and I would have to remove it, I would never have built it. So there hasn't been a miscommunication. That was a lack of communication with the businesses. So I want to point that out first.
But, I'm sorry, could you identify yourself? Like, where is your business? Which business is it?
Route 66. I am on 9th Avenue between 55th and 56th Street.
Right.
What is the name of the establishment?
Route 66.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Can I chime in here? This is Wayne Brown. In reference to the information, I don't know the information that was received from DOT to any of the what I call the curbside dining. So I really, through DDC, we really can't respond to that information because, 1 minute they weren't there, then they were, and we just had to deal with that. So from the DDC aspect, we couldn't give any information that we did not have. Now, once we knew what was going to happen and what was needed to be done with the roadway, I physically went door to door and spoke to every business owner, even Jazz. When he was first putting that up, I stopped by and told them that was not a good recommendation at that time, but they did what they did. So I just want everybody to know that we did a very, what I think is a fantastic outreach to majority of the community. So I'm not sure.
Right. I think that's fine, Wayne. I mean, this situation is a very difficult one. We have always feared that when we would have roadway to do, the restaurants were going to be affected. And I don't think there is any simple solution to that, right? It's in the roadway. We need to fix the roadway. I feel very bad for the restaurant, but at the same time, we need to do what we need to do. So it's the way it is. And next year in 23, when there will be the new guidelines, people are going to have to change their setup as well. So, I mean, this was a crisis and it was not a permanent program. And I think we all have to deal with that.
With all due respect, there is still a crisis. The cases are up, so there is still
I mean, there is a crisis. We are still in a crisis. We understand that. Okay.
Just from DOT, I just want to make sure it's clear also that our guidelines have always said that in the event of the need to do roadway work, that we will have to remove structures. So that's always been part of our guidelines and our
What about who else is in the public? Oh,
hi,
Brian.
Christine. Yeah,
Hey,
hi.
Brian.
How are you doing?
Good.
Hi, Christine. Hi, Dale. Good seeing everyone. I had two questions. One is first about the painted sidewalk. I think in theory, it's great. We need the additional space and additional expansion. But I think there's certain things we've learned living with 8th Avenue. And I'm wondering if those could be better addressed in the installation of this painted sideway. And chiefly it's between the pedestrian experience and the bicycle experience. On 8th Avenue, we have consistently bicycles using the painted sidewalk and weaving around other cyclists within the bike lane. I'm wondering if there's more that could be done to create a bit of a barrier between the bike lane and the painted sidewalk for both cyclist and pedestrian safety. So that's my first question. My second question about the same painted sidewalk is, when you put up those images of 8th Avenue, painted sidewalk gets very grim very quickly. Is there a reason that it is this shade of beige that we're using? Is there one that has better durability yet can distinguish itself from the bike lane? So that's part two of that question. And then my final question, and I'm from the 36th Street Block Association here. I had a question about the decision to create a painted island at the transitional point on West 36th Street. That corner is really tricky. We have a lot of commercial traffic that turns off of 9th Avenue because of the Midtown tunnel all the way on the east side. So we'll have tractor trailers turning onto that roadway, and we'll have charter buses, and we often have incidents between cyclists and vehicles and commercial traffic there. And I'm wondering if an actual island would help mitigate some of that and increase pedestrian and cyclist safety there. So thank you for those in advance.
Yeah, so I can start with your first question regarding separation between bikes and peds. I'm actually the project manager for 8th Avenue as well. So I am aware, and we are very aware, that there are some bad actors on 8th Avenue who are using the painted space improperly. We have been looking at some sort of material that could be used to separate bikes and peds. It's difficult because it's such a long stretch of figuring out what material we would use, how we would maintain it, would it pose a tripping hazard? So there's a lot of considerations that go into that, but it is something we're very aware of as a limitation of painted ped space, that it can be used by.
It's really essential that you guys come up with solutions.
Wait, Brian, why don't you let them answer?
Yeah, okay.
You had your time.
Sorry.
So it is something we're aware of, and it is something we're trying to address, and it's kind of one of those things of growing pains with like new projects and how we implement them. So it's definitely something on our radar, and it's something we're looking into. But it's not necessarily something we have a quick fix right now for.
Is there the same width of buffer on 8th Avenue, or is there a little more maneuvering room here for cyclists?
That's actually a good point. Let me go to the picture of 8th Avenue. That one's not quite a good one. So one of the limit, I guess it depends on what section of 8th Avenue you're talking about, but in the upper 30s and 40s, lower 40s, this section, because of the moving lanes next to them, it's quite a narrow bike lane. So there's not as much maneuvering space. This will have a wider buffer, so there will be more room to pass. So that is a consideration. So it's something we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on and look at.
Could you do you have your on the right side, you have the bump up and then bollard, right? Flexible. Could you install the bump up on the other side between the?
So yeah, that's actually something we've looked at doing, and it's a question of, does that constitute a trip hazard if we have active parking and people are getting out of vehicles? That's one possible concern. It's also, which here would be more protected, but that stuff does get hit sometimes, and it's kind of a maintenance issue. So that is one of the things we've been looking at and considering, but at this point we don't have.
What's the color of the? What about the color of the? Pavement?
Yeah, so the color is unfortunately set. So that is the DOT standard color for our painted ped spaces. I will say though that one of the reasons it's kind of shabby on 8th Avenue is because the roadway condition is kind of shabby. The asphalt is not in very good shape. We are exploring repaving this section of 8th Avenue next year or this coming summer. So the painted surface does hold up better on fresh roadways, which this will be a freshly repaved roadway. So that is something to consider. Because ponding water, like when you have small potholes and the curbs are in kind of rough shape, they do contribute to that discoloration of the painted space.
Okay.
Was there a third question?
There was a third question?
The islands.
Yeah. The islands.
One island at 36, yeah.
So I can bring that to our team to check. We run turn analyses on all of our geometry, so I can make sure that they've identified that it will work with larger vehicles that you identified, and then we can investigate a concrete island. I will say though, our concrete resources are very limited for in-house resources, and we have to spread those resources throughout the whole city. So the goal is to eventually upgrade all of our painted spaces into concrete. It's just a question of when we will have capacity to do that.
Okay. Follow up to that question. I didn't raise that issue when DTC Jeffrey was talking about resurfacing up there. How are you going to make sure that we don't have ponding? When you rebuild this, we have ponding everywhere.
Understood.
How do you
Christine,
manage the
Charles
vendors?
Yeah, Charles, my colleague, will jump in if that's helpful. He's the engineer,
probably
not the
answer
engineer.
Good evening, everybody. I'm the project manager for the 9th Avenue project.
Yeah.
As far as ponding, conveniently enough, between 50th Street up to 59th Street, most 9th Avenue is on a nice gentle hill, and a lot of the water continues to go downhill. Ponding problems are more of an issue when you have very flat areas. It's difficult to set the asphalt at just the right pitch because you're working with very, very small fractions of an inch. But I don't expect this to be a problem. I mean, if there are any ponding problems, they're probably mistakes that are easily fixed.
Well, what about at the bottom of all the ramps, the pedestrian ramps?
Well, maybe we could look at some specifically, but I believe that on 9th Avenue, on that section of the project that I'm on, we don't really have any problems. There are 2 problems that I know of, but they're easy. They were mistakes. They're easy to fix.
Okay. And then on the section which has been repaved between 48 and 34, first of all, a lot of places have not been repaved because we have those sheds, right?
Yeah, the repaving was more of the bike lane an attempt to repave the bike lane consistently. We did have to work around existing open restaurants.
And we have a lot of ponding on that bike lane.
So that's something we can bring up to our teams who manage that repaving, and we're kind of constantly juggling like repaving areas, going back to areas that where an open restaurant might have left or vacated, so we can go back and repave it. It's kind of a constant.
But I'm just talking about the ponding between just at the curb. There is a lot. I mean, I can tell you on 36 yesterday was like a swimming pool, and it keeps going, and then you go a little further, and there is another big potholes, and I don't know. You know, we really need help on that. So I am done. More people from the public?
Yeah, there was Corey and Dorian.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm Corey Samuels from Cashville Garden.
Hello, Corey.
Hi. I've lived in Hell's Kitchen over 20 years, so I'm super excited to see all the sidewalk and bike lane changes going on. I think they look awesome. As a business owner, frankly, I'm after a really, really difficult winter, and as you know, a very difficult 2 years, I'm terrified to go into this summer season without our outdoor season, without our outdoor seating. I want to ask a question about the schedule. I believe I heard that the work is going to be done in 2 phases, and the first phase is 51st to 54th. And if that is the case, is it possible for those who are in phase 2 to keep their outdoor seating until such time as you're ready to move to phase 2?
I think I can answer that. It was considered that perhaps we could work from 51st to 54th first, delay the work at 55 to 56. Part of the reason was that on your same block, there was an emergency boiler that was set up, and we thought that we would be forced to delay that work. As I found out today, though, that that emergency boiler was removed. That contractor did finish. I'd like to talk to the contractor about how many crews they can get on the site. Obviously, the more crews, the faster the job would go. But depending on how quickly he can get maybe a second or third crew, might determine when we start to mobilize between 55 and 56. All right, so I would have to follow up with you about, I don't think the contractor has made any definite plans about the crew because he hasn't seen enough of the street cafes start to be removed.
So I'm not sure I got what the punchline. The punchline is yes or no?
It is a yes, it is a possibility that we could delay that work. But I don't want to.
We don't want to delay anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to move that date yet for May.
No, wait. We don't want to delay anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think what Chuck is saying is, this is the first time the city has really pushed hard for the removal of restaurant sheds in a bulk number. So we're ready to go. The contractor's ready to go. I think, they may start in one section first is what we're trying to say. And then if they can, they will start on that 55th to 56 at the same time.
At the same time, right? So you want to keep your flexibility, right?
That is absolutely our intention. Again, we recognize this is not good for the businesses, but we have to do this now, unfortunately. So we're gonna be full steam ahead if the restaurants aren't there.
Corey, for my notes, will you identify your business and the location?
Yes, it's Cashcoval Garden between 55th and 56th.
Thank you.
What else? Who else?
Dorian and Christopher.
Hello, Dorian. I don't see Dorian. Oh, I have a number 544.
And if I could ask other business owners to clearly identify their locations for me, just for my notes, so I can capture them. If anyone else.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. How are you?
Okay. Go ahead.
I own a few restaurants in the affected area where the proposed project is about to take place. Just to elaborate a bit more on the question that was just kind of wrapped up, the segment between 55th and 54th and 55th Street, where one of my businesses is located. Didn't get a clear answer there. Is there a possibility or not a possibility to postpone and maintain the outdoor sheds? I'm right next door to Cashcoval Garden. For record, 9th Avenue Blue Seafood is the name of the establishment.
So my understanding is that there is not a possibility.
That's not a possibility.
Right.
All right. So we are clear on that. We have to remove our sheds.
Yes.
Yeah, so we would like to start, again, we've tried to give the businesses as much time. So we said May 1st, and then we have the 9th Avenue Food Festival. So we would really like to start shovels in the ground on May 18th.
Okay. The second question is, it was mentioned earlier, initially 25 restaurants are affected by this project. And then we hear 37 restaurants will be affected by this project. including the side street. Can you guys identify those side streets so we can take measures if one of our businesses will be affected? Since we are talking about communication, miscommunication earlier.
So that's a good question. So Warren, can you give us the
Yeah,
list of
I
the
could
side
answer
streets?
that. Basically, all the side streets that are close to 9th Avenue, 51st, 52nd, 53rd, 54th, 56th.
And if you need weigh in to,
And the main reason why is that in order
And they
to
are
do
on the east and west,
the east and west,
on both sides of the avenue.
correct, if there are any.
and
What
the main
is
reason,
the-
the main
sorry.
reason why is that when we start to work within the intersection, we have to detour traffic around our work zone. We have to put in a traffic transition to shift them to one side safely. And any street cafes that are in the side street will probably interfere with that lane shift.
but just to weigh in, can Mr. Gashi, if you want to get in touch with Wayne Brown, he can visit the restaurants. He can talk to you personally if that's helpful as well.
Sure, yes, we'll really appreciate that. I think Wayne knows where my businesses are located. But what is the depth? Meaning, how far on these side streets the sheds will be affected? If you have 2-3 restaurants on the side street, let's say 53rd or 54th Street, there may be 2 restaurants next to each other. Is there
How
a
many,
depth?
how many
Say
feet?
8
How many
feet,
feet?
10 feet, 12 feet, 24 feet? Or you
Yeah,
need the
Dorian,
whole
I get
length?
it. How many feet?
Yeah, I would say roughly 50 feet from the crosswalk.
Roughly 50. Okay.
50.
50.
Okay. Thank you, Dorian. Next.
Next is Christopher and Asi.
Okay. Where is Christopher? Here's Christopher Sanders. Yes.
Hello. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask about the crosswalks. Are you all going to be using the raised crosswalks or the level crosswalks that Eric Adams brought up earlier this year? Or they're just going to use the ones that kind of dip down into the street and they like create the
Okay,
puddles?
so raised crosswalk or normal crosswalk?
As part of this project, we're not proposing raised crosswalks, mostly due to the fact that this is kind of a quick change as part of the roadway restoration. We're not proposing any major changes to drainage or roadway geometry so that a raised crosswalk would require. So no changes to the crosswalks as part of this project.
Okay, Christopher, who else?
Hi, my name is.
Hi, Asi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Asi. I'm from Atlas Social Club, 7539 Avenue. My question is that according to this community advisory that the DOT gave everybody in the neighborhood, the renovation are from 51st Street and up to 56. So my question is for businesses that are below 51st, why are we asked to move it right now? Is it possible to move it later on when the work is going to start below 51st Street?
Sir, I think I can answer that question. The main reason why that you were notified is that when it comes time to occupy the east half of the street, we will be shifting traffic over to the west side of the street. When the traffic is going through the 51st Street intersection, it would be heading towards the street cafe along the west side. So that's why you were notified.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Who else?
There's no one else.
Okay. David Warren, you had a bunch of questions.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. First of all, I missed what time is this construction going to be happening during the day? What time of day is this construction going to happen? How will it affect residents and business? I mean, that would be my first question. I have a bunch of others.
We're going to be working Monday through Friday from 7 to 3:30.
Okay, no night work. Okay, the other thing is my little parochial concern is actually below 34th. It's on approximately 32nd Street on 9th Avenue till about mid-block where the construction fence is between 31st and 30th. And that is the temporary bollards are not there. As a result, for a long period of time, there was a vendor using it as a personal parking spot. Jordan from Councilman Botch's office was able to stop that, but it's still being used intermittently as a drop-off. And because, in all fairness, the vehicles don't realize it's a bike lane because there's no markings, there's nothing there. So you can't really blame these drivers. They think, well, it's either a parking spot or
So what we want, David, hold on, David.
we want temporary bollards to be put there, and also a time frame of when this is going to become more permanent.
Right. This is in the back of Moynihan Station, where they are working on Moynihan, and they have built a decent interim space for bike lane, but we're missing about 100 feet of that. And so that 100 feet, hold on, David, and that 100 feet needs to be protected. We don't know where to go to ask for it.
It also is the same block as Dunkin' Donuts. It goes past the Moynihan Station and goes about a half a block of where, like, that corner
Right,
between
up to down there
where
to
the fences,
30th
yeah.
Street. So I don't know, Colleen, I mean, who can help us on that? Nobody.
Well, I know that's part of a different DDC contract for a different water main project, and I know that is also wrapping up relatively soon.
Right.
But we can, I think, get in contact with.
That would be great, Casey. Thank you.
Groups.
That would be really helpful. Okay, so if I don't know whether I can recap, but I think we have heard about, we will make some notes about sheds and what happened to the sheds when it reopens. We will note the extension, the 36th Street. We will note our wish to have trees, even though we know you are not responsible for the problem. We're going to raise the issue of ponding and the resurfacing and bike lane protection, 57th Street split phase, and the concern about the November end game, which is quite late. So we will touch on all these issues that we have, raised essentially. Anything else I missed, Dale? Oh, Blake?
I'm wondering if we would say something about, trying to do it incrementally in as much as possible, and if there is opportunity for the sheds to go back earlier or, during a different time to allow for that, since, like the project has been going on for several years, but the actual work is only happening, it seems very sporadically, if at all. So even if the project itself is a 6-month project, could the sheds be up whenever the work is not being done, or as portions of the roadway get completed?
I don't think that's viable.
I think as Chuck mentioned, part of it is the traffic diversion,
right,
which would make that difficult, because then we're going to have like traffic weaving from one side to the next, and that doesn't seem
and it's
like
really reconstructing the street, like, which is really completely opening the whole surface of the street and reconstructing it. So
I'd like to also add that even though we may only work within one block, if we follow your suggestion, I will, if you will, upstream of the work zone, we would have to put in a taper ahead of it. that adjacent block would also have MPT devices in it as well.
How does
So
that
it's very, very difficult to just work in one block.
I think we need to bite the bullet. I mean, we've been waiting for this project for a long time. So I think we need to bite the bullet on that.
And the second bullet is about the roadway being reconstructed on these blocks, but is that a different nature of reconstruction than the other blocks?
Than the other what? Yeah. The other one are just surface asphalt and painting.
This is road
The
bed.
top is really reconstructing a street, which is totally ripping it up and, getting down to the guts and putting it back. And it's like a big job. And they probably, so, all right. So that would be my, does somebody wants to make a motion on that?
I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter based upon the restraints that you had placed.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favors?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? And present non-eligible? All good. Thank you so much. This is really, I know it's really a hardship for the restaurant, but it's very, very exciting for the community to have this project go forward. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kimberly, thank you.
Thank you all.
Casey, thank you, everyone. We will appreciate. Thank you. Ryan. Okay, so our next subject is the Highline.
Yes, Highline, the Highline Connector.
The Highline Connector, another construction project. This is the night.
We have Henry from Brookfield and
Yes, Henry from Brookfield and maybe somebody else, but I don't know.
Well, good evening, everybody, and again, thanks for having us. We will go through the Highline. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the Highline itself, and what happens above, what happens below. But this evening, I'd just like to walk carefully through the stages of construction that it's going to impact, the roadway. And I guess I should share my presentation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yes.
All right. So we
got
should
it.
be seeing an overall. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things before we got into the Highline. One is over the next couple of weeks, we're going to put a crosswalk where 32nd Street should be. Sorry about that. So when you look at the picture where my cursor is at the bottom of the picture, that is, right now, Citrovia, that art installation underneath the shed. And there'll be a crosswalk from the new Moynihan, station to across 9th Avenue to that Manhattan West site to where that shed is. We will start dismantling that shed as early as May of this year. And we expect to have through traffic on 31st Street open, sometime this summer.
Oh
So
my
just
God.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the coming, and it's a very tight place to try to fit all the utilities. But we think we're on track now for opening up again 31st Street now this summer. Crosswalk over the next few weeks where 32nd Street should be, and then it's going to take us probably until May of next year, so a year from now roughly, to have the full open space at Manhattan West, along with the Art Plaza in front of the Southeast Tower, and all the sidewalks and curbs completed. So again, this is the Empire Station Complex, crosswalk across 9th Avenue to the green space, which is the segue to the Highline, which the big idea has always been to connect the station, with the Highline and the points west, and those arrows represent where the new section of the Highline would be. And thanks to ESD and Friends of the Highline, again, a year from now, we should have all of that, completed. So, we've had a lot of communication with the community board about, what that looks like at grade. So here's a rendering. In total, we expect to install 12 planters on what would be the south side of this new island underneath the Highline connection. Those planters will have lighting. We've also adjusted the lighting so that there is what we call Cobra heads, or the street lights, on the south side of 30th Street to reduce the amount of street lighting that was being provided underneath the connector. And the lighting that is under the connector is tilted to shine on what's currently Dyer Avenue, or on the north side of this particular island. So that's, the conversations that we've had, and, how we're moving forward with regards to the planters and the lighting, here on 30th Street. And here's a rendering looking west, again with those, those planters on the south side, and those will have lighting around the underside of the planters themselves. So how would he get there? Well, one of the first things that we're going to do to install this connector is to take a portion of the spur of the Highline. So I wanted to share that with the community. We're seeing here those hatched areas will be behind construction fences, and that will allow us to, make the necessary provisions to connect the new structure, to that spur. So that's a section of park space that's going to be removed. This is a what the sidewalks and crossings will look like when the connector is in place. And here we're installing a 7-foot sidewalk on the east side of Dyer Avenue. Today there's no sidewalk. And then there's a crosswalk that's being installed, from the east side to, I'm referring to this as an island, but this is technically the north sidewalk of 30th Street, right? Which will be underneath the connector.
Mhm.
And then you'll be able to cross 10th Avenue where the crosswalk is. Today there's, I guess a hint of a sidewalk along the north side of Dyer, and then you still have to cross over to what I'm referring to as the island. Technically, it's the north side of 30th Street sidewalk, and then to the crosswalk to 10th Avenue, to points west. So this is the current phasing of where we are today. We have closed off Dyer Avenue where my cursor is. That Dyer Avenue kind of wraps around and makes an L shape. And so this section of Dyer Avenue that leads to the tunnel has now been captured as part of the staging area for construction. The foundations here along 30th Street have been installed, and we're working a little luck and the help of some friends on the 25th of this month. We will mobilize a crane to start the superstructure or the steel erection for this portion, the 30th Street portion of the connector. And I just want to point out that today now, as we speak, cars travel east on 30th Street and make the left-hand turn onto Dyer if they have to, or continue east on 30th Street. So phase 6 is really when we're going to take shutdowns, and this happens over a period of 3 weeks, right? Where we'll take on nightly and or weekend outages, right? We will close down 31st Street and the ability for cars to travel and make that left-hand turn on Dyer Avenue. So if a car thinks they're going to New Jersey, and obviously we'll have signboards and they'll have been notifications, they will not be able to make that left-hand turn onto Dyer Avenue. They'd have to, continue east and then find their way back to an entrance to the tunnel. But I just want to pause here for a second because this is also going to happen over the weekends and nightly on overnight work, and we wanted to just make sure that if we find that this is particularly offensive, that we have a phone number and an email that can be sent to us directly, and we in real time could evaluate what that activity is and try to look at adjusting that activity so that we have less of a negative impact. That said, really what we're doing is erecting large members. This happens to be a wood truss, which will be assembled on the ground and then will be picked up by the cranes and put in place. This is not like jackhammering of rock or opening asphalt, and therefore I think this is going to be a lot less audible even in the early morning hours than some of the other work we've experienced in this area. I recall working with the community board and the Hell's Kitchen Block Association when we were chopping up, concrete roadway, and we're only permitted to do it at nighttime, and that was obviously not this. And so we might hear, an occasional, person speaking, to each other, an occasional hammering of somebody trying to get something into place, but that would be intermittent and not, a continuous, jackhammering that we've, understand is problematic, obviously. So this is phase 6. And then we will, start to open, the roadways to a large extent, business as usual. But the island remains in place probably until, March of next year. Probably May is a better guess. I might actually have the.
What is this green stuff? The green, yes.
Yeah, that just represents islands. I know that maybe green is not the best representation for that, but it's
but
not.
These are islands which do exist or which are being built.
These will be built, right?
Okay.
Behind these, I'll call it enclosures, Christine, and those
Okay.
islands when we're complete, those will be concrete islands, to protect, and to create the path for the cars that are traveling.
Right.
So, I won't bore everybody with all the details, but I think, at the expense of repeating myself, we're going to be, completing the Highline in phases, planting as early as March of next year. Substantial completion is, between March and May of next year, and then June, we expect to be, complete with all the work associated with this Highline connection.
Okay.
And then I can leave you if you want to take a screenshot. I'm happy to email this out as well. Again, as we move through the process, if there's a good idea or an objection to something that we're doing, please, feel free to reach out so that we can, consider it. Thank you again, for having us this evening.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any question? Raise your hands. No, I'm going to start then. I had 1 or 2 questions. So this is, so Dyer Avenue, I mean, you were talking about traffic that wouldn't be able to get on Dyer Avenue, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are you going to catch that before they get on 30th Street? What are the signage on 10th Avenue?
Yeah, there's a full complement of detour signs, Christine, that'll be put, on 10th Avenue a couple of blocks before. And there's notifications days in advance of us, closing this particular entrance to
and the detour sign, the detour goes where?
Well, the detour will ask drivers, I believe, to go to 38th Street and use the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel on 38th Street.
That is not good. Absolutely not good. You cannot, I'm totally opposed to that just because the volume on 11, you need to bring the volume, you need to talk to the Port Authority, and you need to bring the volume to the top of 10th Avenue, like they did when they were installing the what is it called, Dale? The gantries.
Gantries, yeah.
You cannot come on 38th Street. First of all, 9th Avenue is already totally oversubscribed, totally gridlocked.
Right, but Christine, I thought you could continue down 10th Avenue and then make a right-hand turn on 38 and then make a left into the tunnel at that point.
No.
Arriving at 9th Avenue.
You make a right turn on 38, then you have to make a right turn on 9, and then you have to make a right turn. So you would have to go to 39 or not 39, but 41st.
Okay.
To make a left turn. And the Port Authority had a plan that they put in place when they did the gantries, and that plan worked fairly well, and they were going up on 10th Avenue and making them turn right in as a contra lane or whatever it is. And it was working fairly well. So that's the model you need to do.
Yeah, happy to explore the detour wherever it makes best sense to deviate, this traffic.
Yeah, Jerry Lindenmeyer, right?
Yes, we work very closely with
So
Jerry on these closures.
you need to tell him that this is the detour we need.
Okay.
To go to the one they use for the gantries, and it cannot come on 38th Street because that intersection is a nightmare during 5 hours of the day because people are trying to get in and other people are blocking. And then we have a fire station there. So the fire station cannot go, the fire trucks can't go through. So this is really not the best way.
Oh, no, I fully appreciate that. And Christina, happy to adjust the outages until, the detours accordingly. I did want to point out that this is happening between 11 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning during the weekdays. And then, over a weekend, so hope, I mean, maybe it's optimistic on my part that there's maybe less congestion than the normal, rush hour.
I think up to 1 o'clock, it's still very congested.
Understood.
At night, you have the people coming from the restaurant, etc., and those intersections are very congested up to 1 o'clock.
Got it. Perfect.
Okay. And then I had a question about the lighting, which I'm delighted with. In the project, are you wiring the north side as well, even though it's not going to be used?
Christine, I got to check where we ended up with that. I believe we're running, empty conduit to the north side, but
that would be great. So if we could confirm that would be awesome.
Okay.
And I think the other side is terrific. So these are my comments. I think that's
okay.
Good. Anybody from the public? Janine?
Yes, bringing over Julia Campanelli.
Julia. Julia, I wouldn't miss it for...
and Candace Hewitt also.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Hi, Henry. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Julia.
Thank you for this presentation. I have many questions, as you might imagine. Is there not an entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel on West 36th Street from 10th Avenue?
West 36 for 10.
From 10?
No, there is a no turn.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. As you know, the community would like no work to be done during the evenings. But if it, especially, is there any way do you have any wiggle room in your schedule, September to November, because school starts in September and children need to sleep? That's one question.
Yeah.
But Julia, we don't have any residents around there, right?
Oh, we have lots of residents. If you're going to be working anywhere near on Dyer Avenue, you know how the sound
traveled.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my next question was, Henry, are you going to be, when you close off that Dyer Avenue entrance, are you going to do anything? What are you going to be doing to mitigate the noise of the nighttime work? Are you going to be cocooning Dyer Avenue approach at all? Like you did 7 years ago when you did the resurfacing of the tunnel?
Yeah, Julia, this is a very different operation than, removing concrete panels and jackhammering them
I understand
in the middle of the night, right? And so at the moment, we're not anticipating to create, a barrier wall or a sound mitigation wall in the tunnel so that, noise doesn't travel from 31st Street to 34th Street, right underneath the cover, which is what we experienced during the deck replacement of that bridge, right? We will, as we always do, make sure that we're, positioning compressors, machines, that are stationary, that have engines, that are going to be audible in the best location on site possible. and when necessary, shroud them, right? So that we dampen or mitigate any of the noise on that. This particular operation, we don't expect to have much of those equipment going on, other than any supplemental lighting, which might require a generator of some kind because they're working on overnight and it's specific tasks they need to occur. Other than that, what we would expect is the assembly of large structural members, and occasionally it requires a hammer or some way to position this thing into place. And we find it it's very challenging, short of saying impossible, to sort of mitigate when they have to hit this or strike the member to position it into place. But that's not to say that we won't be monitoring to make sure that we have as least impact as possible. We understand the sensitivities probably more than most in the area. We're looking, and meeting with, our residents at FIT on 31st Street.
Yep.
We're, obviously meeting and speaking with the residents at the Eugene, which are immediately adjacent to this particular work. And, and so the short answer is we're not at the moment, looking to put any partitions in the tunnel. We don't believe it's warranted, but we're going to continue to monitor the situation. If the first night we're out there, the things are not the way they're, are too extreme, then we will, adjust accordingly.
One thing that does create a very loud, disturbing noise is the reverse alarms on any vehicles, especially at night when there is not as much other construction noise or traffic noise, ambient noise blending in with it. So those reverse alarms are extremely loud at night. Have you applied for your AHVs already?
I believe we have already applied for our after work variances.
We have an agreement with the DOT for the construction in our area, if it has to be at night, that it starts at 7 p.m. and ends at 3 a.m.
Yes, Julia, the DOT has, a limited jurisdiction in this area. We do obviously brush up against DOT in many different respects, but this is the Port Authority. This is exclusively being done over the Port Authority land, and they are dictating the hours that we can close the road, in and out of the tunnel, right? And so, I'd love to do this during the day, but obviously they see large congestion if we were to take it offline outside of the hours that they're providing.
They have said this for 7 years since we've had construction in our area, and they say they never close any of the approaches. When on 34th Street, the Dyer Avenue approach is closed every Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. and for rush hour, and the traffic is diverted to 10th Avenue. So we're begging you, please, to talk to Port Authority if we need to have another meeting with them so we could appeal to their better angels, because we've been through so much with the construction in the area. Mm-hmm. It took years of meetings and negotiations with our community and the community board and our elected officials and DOT to change these hours of work at night, just because we have been through so much. So we're begging you, please don't make us go through this again. It seems like, September through November, but I'm telling you, it's decimating our neighborhood. People are moving out. People that are now working at home, in addition to just, there's no respite, because we have, again, we're at 24/7 construction.
Yeah. So, Julia, I will say that whatever work we can do during the day, we will do during the day. We are working in these particular areas, and I believe it's a 3-week duration. That we're, it's over a 3-week duration that we would be doing these closures. I don't want you to get the sense that we're going to spend the next year having, overnight work, right? I mean, the majority, 90% of the work that we're doing is during the day. We were fortunate to get the foundations in during the day. That's, heavy equipment, obviously takes a lot of energy. All of that's now been completed, it's behind us. And it's really these these moments where we need to lift large sections of structure into place, that we'll be working at nighttime. I could get you the exact sort of dates as we get a little bit closer. But again, we will be doing, maybe 3 weekends of closures and, 10 to 15 evenings of closures potentially to get.
And what are the hours that we are thinking about at night?
Yeah, the overnight shift is 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. on the weekdays.
Okay.
Right.
There's no reason to start at 11 because there's no traffic after 7.
And on outages right, and then complete outages are 11 p.m. would be Friday night to 5 a.m. Monday morning. Would be we call it a 55-hour outage, but it would be that weekend outage. And those are those are that long, not because we're necessarily working in the middle of the night overnight on Saturday night, but you have to bring the crane and assemble it, and that takes a good amount of time, and you need to demobilize that equipment, and that's really what's happening, and you really only have one day of actually lifting structure into place. So that just to describe those 3 weekends or 3 weeks of working at nighttime is the work that we anticipated. After that.
You said it was 8 to 9 weeks for phase 6. You said September to November.
Let me. I have. Well, you're right. It's the steel install is during 3 week period. Sorry to fumble. Right. Let me see.
Here we have steel installed 3 weeks.
Right, and it's 8 to 9 weeks
and
for
the
the heavy
timber
timber
is
install.
9 weeks.
Right.
So it's a total of 12 weeks.
It's a total of 12 weeks. And the steel install
but the 12
is going
weeks
to happen.
are not all even nights, right?
That's correct.
So of the 12 weeks, what's nights?
Of the 12 weeks, we have probably 3 weekends or 4 weekends where we're going to be, taking the full road closure.
Right.
And then we'll probably have, 15 to 20 days of nighttime work, or 3 or 4 weeks of nighttime work where we have to close the roadway.
Okay.
I understand that Port Authority is determining the hours, but we would greatly appreciate it if you would go back to Port Authority and tell them what the situation is here in terms of what DOT has agreed is for the hours, for the work hours.
So Julia, what are those hours that you have in mind?
7 p.m. to 3 a.m. And in that way, if there has to be night work, residents have between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. to try and to get some sleep in, because it's very.
Okay. So I think the difference here is, Henry, is you were going to go from 11 to 5, and they would rather go 7 to 3.
Which will give you more hours.
You may want to think about whether there is some kind of middle ground here.
Sure, you're proposing 6 hours a night, which would extend the work, but if you were able to work from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m., that's 8 hours. So you would gain 2 hours per evening.
So the question is whether you can manage within the window, and I don't think you are that far. So that seems to be something that can be worked out.
Yeah, happy to go back and try to improve on the start times.
Okay.
And earlier, the other presentation by DOT, they did an examination of the volume, and they said it has not returned to the way it was pre-pandemic.
No. On Port Authority, it has totally returned. On DOT, on streets, it's different. It's 2 different volume, but I think we know, based on living on 9th Avenue, it's fairly clear that we are at or worse.
Well, I look at one of the approaches, and it hasn't returned. I mean, it doesn't last long. By 7 p.m. there's.
All right. So we have anything else, Julia?
Would you consider, instead of reverse alarms, there's another type of air alarm that can be used on vehicles?
Yeah, I'm happy to consider, whatever is, is considered safe, right?
Air kind of, which
Yeah.
isn't, is piercing as an alarm is? As current alarms that are used on trucks and vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the newer equipment has been brought in, like I call it a crunching sound versus the beeping sound. And it's able for you to identify the location of the machine a lot more accurately just because of the nature of the sound itself, and it's not as offensive. So we'll see what machine is available that's equipped with those particular devices. I mean, we have, we like to think we're using all modern equipment and that it's going to have the latest and greatest, Julia. There's obviously some exceptions. There's a very unique pieces of equipment sometimes that need to be employed, and we may or may not be able to disable those devices.
Right.
But we are cognizant.
Best effort.
Yep, happy to do it.
Okay.
And then, that we have these conversations, when we're buying this stuff with the contractors. We're like, guys, we're going to be working at nighttime, and we need to have respectful of the community and so on and so forth. So we're already, have taken steps.
Okay.
To make sure we have.
So, Janine, we have. Oh, do you have still one, Julia?
Yes. Will you be including this work in your look ahead, your weekly look ahead?
Absolutely.
Manhattan West.
Yes.
And I mean, would you be agreeable if it comes to a point where it's just too loud? Would you then consider some barriers in Dyer Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Henry.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
Okay,
Can I ask?
Janine. Oh, I'm sorry, Dale.
I just want to ask a point of clarification to Henry. So, Henry, once the steel is erected and those cranes are done working, is the bulk of the work then off the street, and would you characterize that as largely daytime work? Like the nighttime work is the cranes and lifting the steel and erecting the steel, and then you revert to daytime?
That's exactly right, Dale.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that as a characterization of the scopes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Janine, who's next? Candice?
Hi, guys. So I'm a resident on 30th between 8th and 9th. And I think it was maybe the last 2 weekends, there was work being done that I could hear coming up the street. And I looked out and I was like, okay, I'm going to shut my windows now. So there is a reverb, just to let you know. And that was from noon till 3:30. And it was on a Saturday.
It's on 38 and 9, right? Between
I'm on 38. Yes.
And I can tell you what it is. There is one building being excavated, and it makes an incredible loud noise. Because I live on the same block.
I'm on 30th and 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so my question is on the steel. I believe her name is Julia. She brought up a great point. As a resident, I'm pleading with you, please, 3 a.m. I do construction. So those 3 hours that I don't even get that. I get the 5:50 train to go to work. So I have a little less time. So I would be greatly appreciated. I know it's just erecting the steel at that point, taking the cranes. But if you're going to be hammering down,
Yeah,
I'm going to be a very angry person on Monday. So.
I fully appreciate it. To the extent that we can adjust those hours, to start earlier. I mean, we do need, as you can imagine, the full period, the full shifts to try to accomplish the work. But I'm happy to start it at 7. In fact, we'd love to do all the work during the daytime. Nighttime work is not great for a variety of different reasons.
Okay. All right. Janine, anyone else?
One more. Hold on. Can I, Christine? Just because Henry had mentioned the citronella, what is going in there? Is that going to be, because you routed me right now, and so I'm going to have to walk in through something else. I don't know which way to go to Whole Foods right now.
Yeah.
So
We will always maintain access to Whole Foods. It just won't be through Citrovia
for
approximately a year, right? We remove the lemon trees, right?
So
and
next,
replace them with real trees. Yeah.
Who's next?
There's no one else.
Oh, that's it. Okay. All right. So let me summarize what I heard. we talked about traffic and not using 38 and 9, but also using 10th Avenue all the way to 41st. And then we heard mitigate the sound. Instead of 11 to 5, do 7 to 3 if possible. And we noted that it was about 12 weeks, of which there would be 4 weekends and about 15 to 20 days. And it will be updated in the newsletter. And this is generally what we heard. I think what we heard and we'll put in the letter with support, obviously. Anybody wants to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion approval for a letter.
Okay, second?
Second.
I second.
Thank you. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one. Present, non-eligible?
I'm present, not eligible.
You are?
Yes.
Blake?
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, 1 Manhattan West.
What, you own the the piece of the Highline?
I wish, but no.
Okay.
Lawyer.
So we're good. Thank you so much, Henry, as usual.
No, thank you for having us.
Looking forward to see you.
Likewise.
Again.
And looking forward to delivering this. You know, a year sounds like a long way, but it goes by quick.
I'm not worried. You did everything else, so.
We're trying.
And I think our next topic, very exciting, is Meatpacking BID, presenting their first phase of a Western Gateway at Meatpacking. And we have Bahij from WXY, XY, yes, and Evan Sweet from the Meatpacking BID. We are listening to you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Good evening. My name is Evan Sweet. I'm the Director of Operations Neighborhood Planning for the Meatpacking District. We're really excited to be here tonight. Some of you may know our Executive Director, Jeffrey LaFrancois. He is not able to make it this evening, but he extends a warm hello to everybody on this committee.
So finally we see who is doing the real work, you know.
Tonight, we're coming to you to provide a kind of first update on what we're calling our Western Gateway Area Needs Study. We're working with my colleagues and consultants here with WXY, as well as working with Sam Schwartz Engineering on this project. This is a really exciting moment to look at how the physical spaces on the west side of the Meatpacking District can be changed and transformed to better match the uses and activities that we're seeing along our western edge, and then also providing a new gateway to this neighborhood instead of just from the east, thinking about how the west of this neighborhood can be improved. So tonight, the team from WXY will give a short presentation as it relates to some of their findings, as it relates to the area and what, some strengths, weaknesses, some opportunities that they have. And then really critically and really importantly for us is making sure that your voices are included as people who experience these spaces day in and day out. So we can understand what are some of the things that you believe are needs for this area, things that can be improved, struggles and difficulties that you would like to see overcome, as well as some of your kind of operational concerns for this project. At the end, we'll ask you for some formal comment, both I think verbally tonight would be fantastic, but then also as you feel the need to write a written response that includes some of these interests and concerns. We would love to have that so that we can directly incorporate those. So with that, I'll pass it along to Bahij, who will lead this presentation. Thank you all.
All right, thank you all. Hello, my name is Bahij Chansey. I'm an urban planner at WXY Studio, and I'll be happy to lead you through this. Thanks for having me tonight. Janine, if you can please advance to the first slide there. So I will assume for brevity's sake that most people are familiar with the Meatpacking District and the MDMA's work to keep the area clean and well cared for in support of the businesses in the area. The BID has also been a leader in implementing and adopting pedestrian plazas and has set the standard for open streets in its recent pedestrian-oriented district plan. So some recent updates to the area, some upcoming projects in the area, and particularly those at the waterfront, have become the impetus for the district to move to more closely examine its western half and the neighborhood's overall connection to the water. The BID has embarked on this work first with an assessment of the area and its mobility and business needs as it prepares this new public realm vision as the next step in this work. All this work is intended to bring this district's eastern half in closer conversation with the neighborhood's character today in the western half. Our firm WXY Studio is providing urban design and planning services, and we're also working with Sam Schwartz Engineering to support transportation planning in this work. And I'll just say that we are coming here before we have actually embarked on the design because we are truly interested in hearing what you all as local experts have to say about this and hope to incorporate it as we move ahead into the public realm vision. If you can please advance to the next slide. So this map just shows the BID's extents. They manage the area from 8th Avenue over to the water and from 17th Street down to Horatio Street. The Western Gateway study area is really centered around 10th Avenue and the district's connection to the Hudson River across West Street. It also includes Washington Street and 14th Street to 9th Avenue. To date, Sam Schwartz and ourselves at WXY have examined some of the existing conditions, and we're now working to engage the area's businesses and community stakeholders like you all. Can you please move to the next slide? So this Western Gateway area has been a growing priority for the district in recent years, but a few major public and private investments have given the area some greater urgency in this focus. In particular, the opening of Little Island last summer, as well as the planned openings of Pier 57 Food Hall. You may have seen earlier this week, the Pier 57 Rooftop Park opened to the public as well at 15th Street. And the Hudson River Park Trust is also building out Gansevoort Peninsula into a public park. These three investments have introduced or are going to introduce 680,000 square feet of public parks and venues at the waterfront. And already they have significantly increased the pedestrian crossings across West Street at 13th Street and 14th Street. So building on the Whitney's move down to Gansevoort Street and the incredible draw that is the Highline, the MDMA sees it as time to take a harder look at this western half of the district. Next slide, please. So entering this project, the BID has set out 6 guiding principles in line with their overall work. These dictate that the area should be safe and inviting, that its streets and public spaces should be centered around people while balancing the needs of mobility and logistics. They hope that the work promotes east-west connectivity through the district with a special priority for pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as accommodating transit movements. MDMA also seeks to reduce the conflicts between drivers, walkers, and bicyclists to better order the study area's complex intersections, and in particular, those intersections that come off of and access West Street. The gateway should fit into the overall palette of interventions that the BID has already implemented and the design language that is in the district already. And finally, as we think through the logistics, the waste pickup, the deliveries that happen in the district, we hope to, as a part of this process, think through how we're going to streamline those and really make them fit in better. Next slide, please. So at the very highest level, I'm just going to point out a few key points of interest, in particular for your community board. One would be the interchange at 10th Avenue and 14th Street, which includes the slip lanes that kind of intersect with this increasing amount of pedestrian traffic across West Street. We're also taking a closer examination of 14th Street from 9th Avenue to the water and thinking how we better accommodate this increased volume of foot traffic, thinking about how it fits into the larger 14th Street bus corridor. At multiple streets, including along 15th Street, the BID is also interested in examining how to improve the pedestrianization of these spaces, looking to extend some of the open streets treatments in places westward. On 15th Street, it may not be open street, but looking to bring it pedestrian improvements over there. And then finally, looking at 10th Avenue to activate and improve the pedestrian experience over there. Also thinking through what we see as a soon to come protected bike lane that has been hinted at by NYC DOT. Next slide, please. So just before jumping into specifics, I just want to note that the area has seen some recent crashes, including 113 across the BID that have resulted in injuries since 2019. I'll just say that this work really focuses on ensuring that walking and gathering spaces in the district are safe as a top priority. Next slide, please. So as we move through our assessment, we've conceptually divided the area up into 6 subsections. I will briefly review the pain points and the opportunities that we're looking at in areas 1, 2, and 6 that fall within CB4's jurisdiction. Next slide. So here we're looking at 10th Avenue around the intersection of 16th Street. Here, 10th Avenue is a really wide roadway, which makes it kind of an unpleasant experience as a pedestrian. A lot of the facades of the buildings are not terribly active as well, which can make it feel a little bit unsafe at times. At multiple points, the street is also covered by the Highline. This casts parts of the street into shadow, creates these kind of odd spaces underneath. So we're looking at those as the potential for possible lighting installations, possible public art. Along 16th Street, we're cognizant that there's a number of really high volume freight bays. In particular, we are looking at Chelsea Market, which receives deliveries almost all day. We're looking at Western Beef, which also, because of their setup, takes a lot of their deliveries kind of parked on the street as well as on the sidewalk. And then looking at the waste pickup that needs to happen from Fulton Houses at NYCHA. The DOT has also hinted at these plans for this 10th Avenue lane, so we're taking that into consideration as well. Next slide, please. This is just to illustrate under the Highline, some of those dark spaces that can use a second look, maybe something a little bit more vibrant. Next slide. And then here you're seeing that really wide condition, not so pleasant for pedestrians. You're seeing it here having recently been repaved, so there's no markings down, but still we'd like to hopefully improve this area, as I mentioned, kind of inactive facades. And there's places that, because of the open restaurant sheds combining with the Highline cover, you kind of lose this perceptual link to the water from 10th Avenue at this part of the study area. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we're looking at 14th Street and 15th Street as they intersect with 10th Avenue and go on to West Street. First, I'm just going to speak for a second about the pedestrian issues in this area. So both the crossing to the Hudson River Greenway, as well as the crossing to 14th Street Park from the east side of west of 10th Avenue occur over multiple legs. And the timing on the lights across these multiple crosswalks aren't really synchronized. So you can end up waiting for a particularly long time, 4 minutes in total, if you're crossing from the eastern part of 10th Avenue over to the Greenway. On 15th Street, east of 10th Avenue, the BID is also interested in exploring some ways to improve the pedestrian experience. They find that that's in line with Chelsea Market's current use of the space. They've built out some restaurant sheds over there to really encourage seating on that side of Chelsea Market. We are definitely cognizant this is a designated truck route, so there's limited things that we're able to do over here. And then some businesses along that corridor are also interested in preserving curbside access for deliveries and taxi pickup and drop off. Finally, there is this kind of awkward bike mixing zone that exists at 15th Street as bicyclists are crossing west to access the Greenway. It's not really designed for not confident cyclists. It kind of puts you in the middle of 2 moving lanes. And so we're thinking how to better address that. Next slide, please. Here you're just seeing, this is this past weekend, there's a huge amount of new traffic crossing toward the Greenway here, in particular because of Little Island. Next slide, please. So looking still at the same intersection, now thinking a bit through some of the auto maneuvers that happen here that make this a challenge. First off, we have this slip lane that brings you northbound onto 10th Avenue from West Street. This condition feels a little bit like an off-ramp, and it does not make clear through its design that you're about to encounter crossing pedestrians, and we really want to make that a safer condition right there. We also have this very odd condition of this giant weave that vehicles coming westbound on 14th Street have to do to access West Street, where in the span of 1 block, they have to cross across 6 lanes of traffic. This is something that happens by vehicles. It also happens by the buses, M12 and M14D, as well as some freight that accesses the water. We're also looking at toward the bottom of this map, you see at 10th Avenue and 14th Street, some drivers coming off the West Side Highway assume you can make the right on red onto 10th Avenue. That is not in fact the case, and that leads to some dangerous conditions. And because of the switch from one-way to two-way, lower down on 10th Avenue, we see some contraflow traffic that we're trying to avoid as well. Next slide, please. So here you can just kind of see that illegible connection as you're coming off of West Street, either heading up to 10th or going to continue on to 14th Street. Next slide, please. And here is just illustrated that freight traffic moving across the crosswalk at 14th Street and 10th Avenue and having to make that weave to access the water. Next slide. Finally, we're looking here at 14th Street. There's a few things here. We're thinking about how it plays into the larger busway itself. We're also cognizant in this space along 14th Street that it intersects with the Gansevoort Market Historic District. So we'll be thinking certainly how the materiality, how any design considerations there will be impacted by the existence of the historic district there. We also see this as being an extra wide roadway for the actual amount of traffic volume that it currently accommodates, even compared to pre-pandemic levels. It does not quite need to be that wide. So we're exploring road diets. We're also exploring ways to just better accommodate this increased volume of east-west pedestrian traffic there. And then I'll just note, it's not quite in the study area here, but just because it relates to a recent action by CB4, we're looking at how the Chelsea Triangle might be better connected over to the sidewalk at 9th Avenue. Next slide. This is just to illustrate that wide roadway. And of course, that extra width does encourage some double parking, especially with deliveries there. So we're thinking through things like delivery drop-off zones as well. Next slide. So here we are in the process. We have gone through much of our existing conditions collection, looking at physical conditions, analyzing some of the data in the area. We are now in the process of going around to the Meatpacking District's businesses, and we're also going out to community stakeholders such as yourselves to kind of paint a fuller picture here, bring in some complexity, bring in some detail as we move into our next phase to assemble the public realm framework. That's just going to begin with best practices around this type of design, thinking through the context, thinking through the policy work in the city that's affecting this right now, and then moving into really proposals as to how to reimagine this space to achieve the goals of better connecting it to the water, improving the pedestrian experience, making it so that all these spaces are safe from vehicular traffic as well. Finally, as we get into fall, we're going to do some publicity around this report to really encourage the DOT to move on some of this, as well as the other city agencies. We're also looking at ways to implement some temporary pilot programs that will be able to show how these changes can immediately affect the street and hopefully bring changes to bear. Next slide, please. So that is why we're here. We are eager to get any kind of feedback from you all. We want to better understand how this area is going to impact and play into the rest of the community board. Do you see issues, opportunities we've missed here? Where should we focus our efforts? Do you have ideas for how this space can be reimagined? Please just opening it up for you all now. I'll be happy to answer questions about the project along with Evan, and I will just be taking some notes also as you respond. Thanks all.
Thank you, Bahish. So
Thank you all
Dale,
very, very much.
you're first in line.
Thank you.
No, this is Holland. We are, Dale has raised his hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and you are, at this time, you will still be in the public. So I'm calling the committee member first.
Thank you.
Dale.
Yes, thank you both for the presentation. And the focus on the areas of opportunity in CB4. I just want to note that for everyone here, all of my neighbors and committee members, I took the tour of Little Island that was offered by the organizers of Little Island this afternoon or this morning, and it's really worth a visit. And I did see, in fact, what you're referring to with the increased volumes of pedestrian flow across 9A. And also, we also stopped by the the newly opened rooftop on Pier 57, where Google is moving 3,500 employees into a space on one level, and then also the food court and function spaces and this massive public roof deck on Pier 57. So I encourage everyone in our on the committee and in the neighborhood to visit these two sites, because it's like two incredible new resources in the neighborhood. So yeah, with that said, I just want to emphasize that this is in fact real, that there is there's going to be a real influx, like between those two and other developments in the area, there's going to be real serious need for better pedestrian flow from Meatpacking District to the river. So I'm looking
Great.
forward to hearing everybody's suggestions.
Thanks. Jesse. What happened to Jesse? You are.
I always lower my hand and don't unmute myself. Thank you so much for the great presentation. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I think my main the issue I can identify with the most that I've seen and experienced is that that crosswalk to Little Island, how long that can take, how congested it can get. I just want to, has anyone been considering talking about actually creating another crosswalk, possibly on the other side of, I don't know if you could pull up the map again, but on the north side of the triangle. Yeah, it's really hard for me to explain without seeing it.
It's coming.
From the Hudson River Park from the 14th Street Park across on the north end of 14th Street, right?
Yeah, I think this is exactly what yes, exactly. Yeah. And also, because we really need to ask the DOT to get a bike lane, on 10th anyway. So if there was a crosswalk there, it could connect to both that sidewalk and possibly a bike lane on 10th on the west side. But I think there's definitely room for an additional crosswalk there, which is good because the more crosswalks in that area, we're gonna have so much foot traffic. Can
you go to the right page? I don't think this is the right page to have the discussion.
Yeah, right. Here it is. Thank you.
Here it is. Okay.
Yeah, so on the sort of where there's a grassy triangle there in the middle, it is so on the north side of that, so just a little bit up from where the crosswalk currently is, and then
okay, what else?
The west side, and then into a bike lane. No, and I just want to to stress, I think it'll be good for as much as we love the bike lanes on the West Side Highway and through Hudson River Park. It'll be good to get some more stoplights on there in the bike lanes to slow bikers down in that area, because we just have so much foot traffic there and people are terrified of crossing the bike lanes. So another crosswalk could actually be good in slowing down the bike traffic in that particular area.
So the crosswalk would be where exactly?
I'm just throwing it out there tonight. So it's if there's the current crosswalk, and if you just go, I mean, it sort of goes to the north of that crosswalk, and would come across. I guess we would have to add sidewalk and maybe remove a left-hand turn lane.
Bahish, do you get it? Evan, do you get it? You understand where?
Yes, we understand where you're referring to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I won't be able to. We won't be able to write that unless you show us on the map. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I understand, and the point is well taken too. Both that the additional crosswalks are going to help kind of calm the traffic, bike traffic on the Greenway, as well as that it's just going to improve the connectivity there across. So we will certainly take that
and also
into
put extra
consideration.
pressure on DOT to get a bike lane on 10th Avenue going.
I think we're good. I think we're good with that. We don't need a pressure. We have, what I'm saying is that they have said, and they are doing it. They are doing the study this year and installing next year. So
yeah, being that I'm not speaking from DOT, we understand that they sound like they're moving ahead on that.
Yeah, they are.
See.
They are. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
So Brett.
Thanks for looking at this particular intersection. It's always been kind of a ridiculous way to cross there at 14th Street. The thing that I've always questioned is why there even needs to be that triangle. You know, what's so important about that southbound 10th Avenue? I think you kind of nailed it. Like that street going south is the root of a lot of the issues there. That needs to be clarified. One thing I just want to make sure that's also important to people in our district, especially people that are in the low 20s below 26th Street, is that because of what happens by 24th Street, access going eastbound in that area is blocked off. So anyone who lives in that part really does need to get onto 10th Avenue from the West Side Highway at this point. They're coming northbound. So making sure that we have northbound flow from 10th Avenue has to be, I think I would see that as a requirement for anybody going north of 23rd Street into our district. So I'd say look at that southbound 10th Avenue section and I would see how that could be mitigated. I think that's really important. And then that triangle really should not be a triangle. Just needs to be simplified. I think you're on the right track with that.
And just to clarify, you're talking about the green planted triangle kind of in the center of the intersection. We'll definitely take a look at that. And there is a lot of northbound traffic that comes off of West Street onto 10th. And so we're certainly looking to preserve that access.
Yeah, that northbound, a lot of that is serving Chelsea north of 23rd Street because you cannot cross 24th Street from the West Side Highway. You really have to get there from 10th Avenue.
David Warren.
Hi, good evening. Evan, I love that cat in the chair. That's great. First of all, I want to thank you all. I really love the fact that you have on the cobblestones, the flat surface for cyclists to ride. I hope you extend that to more of the cobblestone and also somehow have a mechanism to alert the motor cars that that's what that's for. But my concern is the construction that's going on 9th Avenue between 16th and 14th Street is terrible. I mean, I don't know how, haven't been there in a couple of weeks, so maybe or months, things might have changed because I avoid that on my bicycle. The second thing is where the old Helmstead is, if you could consider somehow getting a loading zone there, because prior to the pandemic, they were blocking the bike lane by loading and unloading, especially in the mornings. So if they had a proper loading zone, they wouldn't need to do that and put cyclists at risk because unexpectedly, all of a sudden, we're going into traffic. Cars are unexpected. So, but once again, thank you for all the work you've done. Hopefully you'll be able to help us with these little things that I've asked for.
So, yeah, we don't have hands. I'm going to, oops. No, can you keep the screen? The first thing is that I think on 10th Avenue, you should plan for a bus lane. Because eventually, as you heard in earlier discussion, we are going to push for a bus lane on 9th Avenue to come down. And we need to start to have a bus lane to go up. And, starting here and creating the foot in the door would be really cool, right? You need to have people can go by bus and go up. And you have a lot of room on the avenue. We need also to squeeze a little bit the traffic on the 9th Avenue. The crossing from Little Island to the other side, the crossing of the west side is just horrible. It's very scary. You have to stop the traffic. But not only that, I think I crossed at the southern part of it. And when you arrive on the other side, you arrive in a teeny tiny street, which has no capacity to absorb the volume. And so it would be interesting if there was a way to make that street, pedestrian, so that you can leave the. So anyway, it's a thought. I think that this 10th Avenue triangle, I don't think there should be an entrance from the highway there at all. I think you should enter the highway lower on 10th Avenue. You know, at the beginning you have but down there. And then, you know, the traffic would be normalized once you get to 14th Street. And you wouldn't have to do those merge, etc. And that thing need to be a square intersection, not a triangle. At 15th Street, we have long time ago asked for a split phase to turn left and protect the pedestrians. So you need something that is protecting people walking on the avenue and going to the park. And a split phase signal would be really helpful there. And I think one big thing is that you really need to make a decision about trucks. You have to decide which street are the truck streets and which street are the non-truck street. If you had 14th Street as a truck route, which it is today,
yeah,
and you had an exit on 11th Avenue on the highway there, you know, entering and exiting there just for the trucks, not for the cars, but just for the trucks, it would get you, you know, and then you would have your bus and your trucks. It would remove a lot of pressure on 15th Street, and it would remove a lot of pressure on you know, so because those bus lanes are good for trucks.
Hmm.
So
yeah.
So
So we're
would,
certainly considering that option. Right now, obviously, you can only come inbound from West Street on 14th Street. So
Right.
we're going to look at multiple options as we move ahead with this. But we're considering that because it would also prevent trucks from having to make that very odd weave up to 15th
Right.
Street.
Right.
What you said about 13th Street, which is the newly installed crossing by New York State DOT. Yes, you kind of come onto this kind of odd street that's a little
Yeah.
bit of back of house for the meatpacking co-op currently. There's a few businesses along that street
although the
that are actually
meatpacking
interested.
portion is
Yeah.
fine, right? But that would
Yeah.
be more fun because you go to the meatpacking and you say, oh, that's the way it was. But the
Yeah,
street
right.
you get on is a teeny tiny street.
Yeah, and you actually come to an empty lot there that's
Right.
also owned by New York State DOT. There's a few businesses in that area of the district that are interested.
But I think you
in
should get,
expanding that
you should try to
pedestrianization.
get your trucks exiting on the highway here.
Right.
Rather than having that intersection, make it really simple.
Mhm.
But that's a thought. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Do we have
Christine.
anybody from the public? Janine? Oh, yeah. Zazer wants to speak. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure this must have been discussed. What about overhead walkways?
Oh, no, it's terrible. We don't want that.
Oh, okay.
Right? But you know why? Because it's not ADA friendly. And you know, if you want to indispose somebody, it should be the cars, not the pedestrians. So we want to be at level.
Okay.
Just as a concept. Dale, you wanted to comment again.
Oh, no, sorry. That was
All right, old hand. Janine, anybody else?
Yeah, Maria.
Yes, Maria. Ah, here's Maria. Hello, Maria. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maria D'Angelo, and I'm a candidate for New York State Senate for the 30th District. So you will have an option on the ballot this year, and I just wanted to introduce myself. Say I've been really helpful to listen to all of the comments from the community and the incredible presentation. Quick question about the planning process. You know, it's so good that the bid is going to the community boards because, you know, so much of planning has overlooked that.
They have to.
Yeah, and I was just wondering to what, you know, I actually visited Little Island about a week ago. It's really great, and I love, you know, there's quite a bit of pedestrian traffic down there. It's just great to see so many people out and about. To what extent are you envisioning the potential congestion pricing to have on traffic flow in the area? And is the BID at all concerned about that? Is the community board concerned about that? And if so,
I think we are a little bit outside of the profile of those questions, but for when I bring it back to the 11th Avenue will not have congestion pricing because that's one of the circular way. So the discussion on congestion pricing is really not applicable to this project. Okay.
No, well, the
All
point
right.
is, will it increase traffic to the non-congestion pricing areas?
I don't think this is not the subject of this discussion. We'll table it for a new business.
Of course.
Okay.
But
thank you. Anyone else?
No one else.
Okay. So you know, it's a letter which is not a recommendation, it's just ideas, right? So we'll pick up on what was said. We'll take the tape and pick up on the suggestion. Unless Evan, you want to send me, and Baij, you want to send us your notes, and then we can put them in the letter.
I have a running
You have the
list
notes
of the
too, Dale.
suggestions
Okay.
noted.
So we need
Yeah.
all the notes because it was difficult to
It'll be like our resolution will be incorporate a number of design phase suggestions, including keeping in account the ultimate installation of a bus lane on 10th Avenue, a bike lane on 10th Avenue, suggestion of a loading zone at 9th Avenue near on the east side of 14th Street. The study of an additional crosswalk at the north side of 14th Street across 9A. Re-examining the traffic flow at the triangle, and a split phase signal at 15th Street and 10th.
Right. And then making 14th Street the truck route and organize it properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a
wonderful.
motion? Somebody wants to make a motion? Please.
Motion to
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Present non-eligible? So it's all good. Beautiful presentation, by the way.
And I just want to also say that, you know, after this formal part of the engagement, you know, we're still taking information as other ideas come up. You know, we welcome them. I think you know how to get in touch with our executive director pretty well. So, you know, give him an earful on that. And like I said, we're really looking, and you said there's a lot of issues that are at stake. We're hearing them, we acknowledge them, and really want to incorporate them as fully as we can into the final vision for this. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Baij. Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Very exciting stuff. Okay, so the next topic, I'm exhausted. The next topic is
Intercity curbside terminals.
Intercity curbside terminal. So there was a document in the Dropbox. This is a document on which we have worked a long time. It was started, a project which was started before the COVID. And the idea was between CB5 and CB4 to say, you know, unless we understand how other cities do it, it's going to be very difficult to convince the Port Authority and the DOT on how to do it once the Port Authority is renovated. Because that's, you know, you are going to have to change the way you do it. Otherwise, everybody will still be in the street. So the purpose of that study, which was in part done by Ernest Modarelli, which used to be at the community board, a co-chair, essentially studied all of the other cities and what they are doing. And what was really interesting is that they have a toolkit of how to manage the buses so that the buses go where the city want them to go and not somewhere else, as we have in New York City. So there is a whole matrix of tools And the matrix is essentially, you can use enforcement, you can use a permit, you can use a bunch of things. Then you can use corralling, which is essentially telling people, this is, you can go in this place, but don't go somewhere else, right? Or you can use pricing, like Atlantic City makes them pay a lot. Or you can use very strong enforcement, like Boston relies enormously on enforcement to direct people to the right places. So the report doesn't really make a recommendation. The report says we have to explore those things, and we have to explore. The other cities are using those tools and they have not been sued. Therefore, it's a proof that this is not something which is risky from a standpoint of the federal guidelines, which is good, right? Because, obviously we should probably use corralling, and we should probably, that's the thing we are not using the most. And other people, Philadelphia as well as Washington, use corralling very successfully. So the idea would be, once we have a new bus terminal, what we want is everybody to be in the terminal. And we don't want people to be just outside the terminal. We don't want everybody to say, oh, I want to be on 42nd Street. Oh, I want to be on 9th Avenue. I want to be on 8th Avenue. We need to have a technique that tells people, no, you cannot be there. You either go inside or you are going to go way further, which is like a reverse corralling. I mean, we are going to tell them, don't come there, right? And I think that's what we are starting to communicate, because the city is under the impression that they may still have to do that. And we want the city to become aware, the DOT, that there are ways not to do that. And therefore, that's the way we're going to do it. So that's the report. And I was wondering whether you had questions or any suggestions, and whether, Tina has.
Hi, isn't the best argument that we're doing something wrong by virtue of the fact, wasn't the New York State Section 1642 and New York City Code passed to try and alleviate pedestrian congestion, traffic congestion, and bus traffic? And frankly, I mean, since that section was passed, I personally have not seen any of the criteria.
Right. So two things happened. First, because they passed, now the new thing was that the buses needed to get a permit, right? Before that, they didn't need to get a permit.
Right. But my only point is, has that really helped? Yes, I understand they
so
need to
it has helped, but I'm going to get to that, but it has helped because now we are consulted every time, and we give them our advice and we direct them to alternate location. And so we do a lot of work that we were not able to do before that, right? We didn't have a way. But the second thing that happened is that the city did not put in place rules which were strong enough. So the state said to the city, you can go and do, identify dedicated street and dedicated stop. And the city didn't do that. They left it at the mercy of one by one.
Okay.
So I think we have the stage now with example, because they said, well, we are afraid to be sued. So now we are showing them that other cities have used those tools in a way that they are not being sued. And therefore, this is fine now to maybe restructure the rules and make them different.
Right. Well, I definitely agree with the fact we need to restructure the rules and do things differently. My only other comment is since this is New York City Community Board 4 and 5, the definitions that were given in terms of the buses is not consistent with the New York City Code or the state statute, the way it's defined. Is there a reason why we're not using the definitions provided in our own laws?
I think we chose those because they are more understandable by everybody, and they are more business as usual. This is the way people talk about things. So even when the DOT talks, this is the way to explain the different things. And we could go back and look at the definition, you know.
Yeah, there are just some slight
Yeah.
inconsistencies.
Well,
That's
if you want to send me the
Okay.
changes, that I'll be happy with that.
Okay.
Right.
I will.
Brett.
I was thinking, and you know, you've heard this from me before, but when we're talking about these long distance buses, you know, when we talk about anything from, you know, sanitation facilities to homeless shelters and all that, we oftentimes bring up fair share. These buses really need to be close to where there's mass transit hubs. We have them. Brooklyn also has them. You know, why you know, Brooklyn might also have a quicker access to places north. You know, Boston, Montreal, that direction. I'd also want to put out there, why are we not talking fair share when it comes to taking these sidewalk locations for these buses? You know, why can't we put this in downtown Brooklyn? Why does Manhattan have to shoulder the entire?
Well,
bus?
I mean, the point is that we are going to now have a terminal, you know, a long distance terminal.
No, understood. But if, you know,
Right.
things don't fit in there, you know, I think we need to be laying the groundwork for.
But I think yeah.
Just like
that
you know,
would be in the
there's gonna
rules. That would be in the rules. But again, we are not
Yeah.
making recommendation for the rules here. What we are saying is that, look, other people do it differently, and it seems to be working, right? And therefore, why don't we copy that, David? But this is a good point. I mean, I'm in agreement with you, David Warren.
Hi, I read the report, I think when you first sent it out a couple of weeks ago, so my memory might be a little rusty, but from a number of years ago, the bus companies were complaining that the Port Authority couldn't fit their buses. I don't know if there's a shortage of space, but they couldn't, I don't know if they've renovated.
No, but
the Port
that's not the
Authority's-
point. Now they will be, because the new terminal is going to be able to fit everyone.
Okay, that answers that question.
Yes.
Now, this might be totally out of the wheelhouse of this, and you can shut me down because, you know, I'm being very parochial. When I was going to my brother's, and he lives like 10 miles out of Atlantic City, they don't allow bicycles on those buses. So when you get to a city, whether they're coming from Philly to New York, it's, you know, you don't have the opportunity to get around other than, you know, if you use a bicycle. So like I couldn't take my bike from Atlantic City back to New York.
These are going to be private companies, so nobody can
Right,
force
that's what
them
I'm
to
saying.
do anything.
We have nothing to do with that. Okay.
Right.
All right. But the report was very lengthy, so I read it. So it was good.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Great.
you. And thank you, Ernest, for the
Jesse.
detailed report.
I'll be quick, but I just want to make sure because I feel like we'll be remiss if we're missing a large swath of the intercity buses, which are actually the unofficial vans that run back and forth from Port Authority to New Jersey. You know, I just want to make sure that this committee is aware of them, thinking about them. I doubt they're going into the terminal.
Yeah, that's the only thing we think about.
It's the only thing.
I'm serious. I'm serious. No.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, they
how
are
does that?
identified as jitneys,
Right.
but the reality is that they are considered by New York City as an intercity bus.
They are.
And
Okay, so
legally,
that
they
is-
are intercity bus, and they have to get a permit, and they need to be considered the same way as the other bus.
So when you are thinking that they will end up in this terminal, or I mean,
Yeah, and that's the whole discussion with the city, because some people at the city were saying, "Oh, the jitneys have to stay in the street," and I said, "No, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I mean,
they don't."
I agree with that. If we're allowing them to run, they should. I mean,
Right.
it's safer.
I
It's
think if
safer
they-
for everyone
first of
to
all,
be
if
in
they-
the terminal. That's fine. But I just want to like, you know, this report was done and it's very thorough and very good. But like, I assume there's studies also out there just talking about like how many of these jitneys are actually licensed, have signed up, and are.
No, we have that. They are all licensed and they are all signed up. We had that fight about 5 years ago.
5 years
and
late.
we moved them from one side of the street to the other side of the street. They
Got it, okay.
sued us because they thought we were, racist. And then just to give you a little background, one of the company signed for all the stops, and then they were reselling the stop to the other companies. And the other companies came to see us and say, hey, this is a racket. And so we had to give them additional stops so that they could pay directly without paying the racket. So we went on that for 2-3 years, right? So we are the people, I mean, the drivers were calling me at home and say, what should I do? This guy is forcing me to pay.
Oh my God. All
So
right,
this was, we are,
focuses on, yeah.
we are deep, but the thing we want to do is we want first to disabuse the city that jitneys are something different. No, they have to sign a permit and they are just like the other guys, right? And then if the first day of the bus terminal there is space, you're not going to be able to tell them no, you have to take them in, right? And then if they say we will want to stay outside, then all the other buses which are inside are going to want to stay outside. So we need to have a technique to keep all these people far away so they cannot go back to the streets around the terminal. That's the play. The play is they cannot just say, well, you know, it's too expensive inside the terminal, I just want to be in the street.
So sorry, and just so I'm clear, like, I mean, I don't mean to, it's late and we can talk offline about this. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, let's talk offline about it. I don't want to keep
okay, but you know, these are the issues we are trying to shape right now, and we are trying to shape DOT's and DCP perception on is it legal to do this or not? Can I have stricter rules? Are the jitneys the same as the other thing? And you know, after people spend $10 billion doing a new terminal, I don't want to have everybody downstairs doing the same thing all over again, right? So with this report, we are starting to say, this is the knowledge here, right? Here it is, let's talk about it. And, you know, I think the resolution would be that this is a report we have put together and we think it's going to be really valuable to plan our policies as the bus terminal is going to be completed, and we don't want to repeat the chaos of the past, right? Something like that, you know, just very innocuous. I mean, it's just a matter of putting it out there.
Because the overall, if I could say, the overall guidance from the city and the DOT has been very liberal, to put it bluntly, because they're saying it's public transportation, therefore it's an overall good, and we're saying there needs to be some real, and we have, as a committee, you know, started to develop organically,
right?
Because we get bombarded with these requests.
But
like,
I'm most concerned. I think we don't want to talk about now. We want to talk about once we have a terminal, it's a different animal, right? It's completely different. It's like you have a place to put them. So what are you going to do? You can't just continue to approve them in the street, right? We need to have a strategy, and this is what the other cities are doing.
Yeah, because the current
strategy works, you know.
The current excuse is there's no capacity. There's not enough capacity at the terminal. Assuming that there will be enough capacity at the terminal, you know, they might find some other excuses to do curbside.
Exactly. So we need to change the rules. And now the next thing was, oh my God, we can't change the rules. But in fact, I read the rules and it essentially say, go do what you have to do. And they're not doing it. So we need to press the city into, but it's going to take 3-4 years. So, I mean, this is just the very beginning of a process here. This is the kickoff of a long process. We need people starting to think straight. They are not right now. Okay, so that would be, you know, a resolution, right?
Yeah, a resolution which outlines, like, you know, we're looking at the impact of the improved, rebuilt bus terminal in our district, and we've seen the issues with curbside, you know, passenger pickup and drop off, congesting our neighborhoods, and we want to look at, you know, some possible.
Well, we want best practices, right? We want to use best practices
to avoid, you know, such congestion.
Right. That's it.
Okay, I make that motion.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, guys. Opposed? Present non-eligible? We're good. I guess we're finally talking about Zazel. Are you presenting?
I hope so, if everyone's still awake.
Oh, yes, we are. 9:21. Go ahead.
Thank you. Janine has my presentation. And thank you, Janine, and thank you to the committee. I'm thrilled to be here. And I thank you for your time. So to honor the legacy of Robert Trentlyon, the Chelsea Waterside Park Association is submitting a proposal for the co-naming of 23rd Street and 11th Avenue for Bob's many contributions to the Chelsea community and New York City. Next. Bob's road to making his Chelsea community a better place took several paths. Next. As a newspaperman, Bob owned and co-owned several local newspapers, the West Sider, Downtown Express, East Side Express, and the Chelsea Clinton News. As a publisher, Bob elevated the role of local publications. His newspapers provided the information and context of the issues affecting our communities, while at the same time fostering the careers of many journalists. Next. Bob also served several terms as the president of the New York Press Association. The organization advocates for community newspapers across the state and runs the annual Better Newspaper Contest Awards in recognition of outstanding journalism. Next. In 1958, he founded and was the first president of the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club, the progressive home for many future politicians, including Dick Gottfried, Tom Duane, Chris Quinn, and Corey Johnson. Next one. Faced with the prospect of an imposing multi-story high-rise to be built on 9th Avenue on the grounds of the General Theological Seminary, Bob organized local residents to form the Save Chelsea organization, which continues to this day to advocate for the preservation of the Chelsea Historic District. Next. Bob was a longtime member of Community Board 4 and served as chair of the Waterfront, Parks, and Environment Committee, looking at the dilapidated piers along the Hudson River in Chelsea. See below. Next. Bob envisioned open public space for a neighborhood starved for parkland and green space. Next. In the early 1990s, he was an initial founder of Hudson River Park, and along with colleagues was a member of the West Side Task Force working with the New York State Senate to create our waterfront park. Next, please. In 1998, the Hudson River Park construction began. Next. This is the beauty shot of what became of the shed house, which I will actually discuss later, and it opened up the view of the Hudson River. Next. This is a quote from Chris Quinn, excuse me. This is as great an example of West Side vision and West Side activism as anyone we had ever seen. And Chris said this in relation to the local effort to create public passive use park space at the once bustling port. And Bob was very active in the planning. Next. This is the pier, which, as you can see on the right, Bob advocated, and he galvanized the neighborhood to fight other uses that were suggested for the pier shed, instead advocating for taking down the pier, which resulted in the Pier 64 Park, which is a beautiful part of Hudson River Park today. Next. So in 2003, Hudson River Park opens, and you can see Pier 64 as it was after the demolition of the shed, and it was such a derelict building. And as the pier has grown over the years. The bottom view is growth in progress. In 2000, thank you. In 2000, Chelsea Waterside Park was founded. The highway reconstruction required removal of an area of the existing park. On the left was a Thomas Smith Park. On the right is the entrance to Chelsea Waterside Park. The community, led by Bob and Doris Corrigan, successfully negotiated for a much larger Chelsea Waterside Park. Next, please. So this is just examples of what it looked like. Bob working on the plan, Bob sitting in his favorite spot, looking at plans, and of course the soccer field. Next. As one of Chelsea Waterside Park Association's founders and its first president, Bob advocated for additional park space to be created from the demolished commercial buildings east of the West Side Highway. Chelsea Waterside Park provides the neighborhood with a soccer field, a basketball court, a playground, a dog park, and picnic space. Today, Chelsea Waterside Park is undergoing a reimagining, including the construction of a public comfort station, something Bob had advocated for decades. Next. And this is an overview of Chelsea Waterside Park. Next. And this is the opening of Chelsea Waterside Park. And Bob is sitting in the middle of the children, which was indeed his happy place. And just renderings of photographs of the park.
Yazel, do you have much more?
No, I'm talking fast.
Okay.
Right, I know it's late.
Yeah.
Next. Okay, we can skip this one. Never one to shy away from taking on city agencies, he fought for the renovation and reopening of the Chelsea Recreation Center in 2004 after many delays. And this was celebrated by Adrian Benepe, who was then the Parks Commissioner. Next. Bob was a longtime member of Community Board 4 and served as chair of the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee. New York City Council awarded Bob and Doris Corrigan proclamations for their work on Chelsea Waterside Park. Pledging to continue appearing at CB4 Waterfront Committee meetings as a public member, he said, "You haven't gotten rid of me yet." And there he is walking along the park. Next. Always thinking of the future, Bob turned his attention to the potential damaging effect of coastal flooding and the rise of sea level due to climate change, advocating in 2010 for movable barriers in New York Harbor and along the New Jersey shore. Next. Bob had the natural ability to bring his neighbors and community activists together to join him in his visions and to accomplish the great things that have enhanced all our lives. The co-naming is a fitting tribute to a man with an expansive vision. Thank you.
Okay, very good. David, do you have a signature?
Yeah, I knew Bob, and I, as president, former
Wait,
president.
David, hold on 1 second, David. I just wanted to ask a question. Zazel, I understand that you have a big petition.
Yes, we have letters from elected officials, people in the community that I sent to Janine.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, we have a letter of support from Dick Gottfried.
Right, Dick Gottfried also. Yeah. David, you have a question?
Yeah, I knew Bob as former president of Chelsea Reform Democrat Club. I really liked Bob, and it would be my honor to make the motion to do the street renaming and honoring him. He was a great person. So
I'd like to second that.
Thank you.
I support that. I think when we grill candidates, applications and what did you do for the neighborhood? I think if there's anyone who I think is like the poster child for what did you do for a neighborhood, it's got to be Bob.
I'm gonna cry, right?
I have to agree. I came on the board and immediately absolutely loved Bob, and he was brilliant. He was effective, and he could see short-term, long-term strategy, and He got,
Relentless.
as you could see, he got a lot of things done, and we're talking about big things. It was not small stuff. These were big parks, big ideas, and he got them done, which was just unbelievable. And it was really an absolutely delightful person, and so witty and so effective. So I'm all in favor. Okay, Brett, you have your hand up again. So David, you are making a motion. Do we have a second?
We have a
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Present non-eligible? Zazel,
Thank you for listening.
go for it. Thank you for waiting such a long time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we now would like to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you all for being such good sports. And
Have a great month, everyone.
Fascinating. Thank you
great
for
members. Great members.
See you
We're so
next-
lucky.
Bye, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Oh, was there anybody in the public who wanted to talk about Bob?
Oh, there was no hands up.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Bye.